Welcome on to episode number 34 of KC Grid Talk. My name is Remy Lida. We're back again on a Wednesday this time, not our normal Tuesday episode, but still back again to talk about everything in karting. It's a big week because there's only 1 week before the 27th running of the SCUSA Supernationals coming up in Las Vegas. But before we get into tonight's show, first off, got to bring on my two co-hosts. As always, we got Caleb Vieska. Caleb, off weekend for you, off so to speak, but you still had, I believe, a little bit of work going on. So tell me about that.
Yeah, just a little bit. Right. We were at the Indy Kart Challenge. We were there. Got to announce that the last round, the turkey race. That was always a good event. So huge shout out to the entire Indy Kart Challenge team. Good end to the weekend. Race Liberante in his, I guess you could say, Supernats prep. Was able to get a win there in the end. So shout out to him, and as well, big news out of Texas this weekend. The Superkarts USA just announced that they are coming to Houston, to Speed Sports Racing Park, my home track, next year for the winter Nats. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was winter Nats, right? And the Florida Winter Tour as well,
Yes.
with Rock. So, two huge news. Excited. A&M lost, so not exciting, but yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on my weekend so far.
Yeah, difficult loss for the Aggies against South Carolina, but a fun weekend covering the IndyCar Challenge. And again, like you mentioned, big news with SCUSA deciding to come to Speed Sports for the first round of the 2025 Pro Tour. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in detail in an upcoming episode, as well as the move for the Winter Series and Winter Tour going to Orlando in conjunction with one another. So that's some of the bigger news on the karting scene. But along with that, Alexander Stroll, Caleb and I were over the airwaves working in some capacity this weekend. I was down in South Carolina working the Maxis race. Alex, what were you doing this weekend?
I was in Cedar Point actually, at the theme park, but then I was also watching Florida lose to Georgia, which is unfortunate. But shout out Texas A&M as well for losing, so it's okay. I don't have to hear Caleb talk about them anymore. But no, I was at Cedar Point. Nice little vacation there. But I think I can speak for the three of us. Where college is kind of kicking our butts a little bit, and our backs are against the wall. We got Supernats coming up. It's gonna be tough to get our homework in, but we're gonna make it work.
Yeah, you got more confidence than I do, but hey, it'll work out. And
More than me as well.
yeah, I will say my team basically had a bye week, and by that I mean we played Florida State, so we were able to come up with that. One of our kart chaser fellow employees, and Brandon Simone, was able to watch the Florida State Seminoles lose to North Carolina, so that made me feel pretty good. But altogether, it was a good weekend. Again, like I mentioned, I was down in Maxis. Caleb was up covering the Pro Kart Challenge, but none of it compares to Las Vegas. We did have Rock the Rio this past weekend. Unfortunately, KC was not there, but still some great racing that we saw. We saw Stephen Miller come away with the Rock GP victory after a really hard-fought race all weekend long. And we also saw Josh Campbell win in VLR. That was one of the more fun races of the weekend, and really a fun class altogether, with the exception of one really scary wreck in the pre-final. And then finally, Daniel Vasil, what a race in the shifter category, just completely in control all weekend long, and walks away with a big victory. So, Alex, I mean, you got a chance to watch any of the Rock the Rio or Rock Vegas action this weekend?
I got to watch a little bit. I watched the VLR race and the Rock Senior race. So Josh Campbell was really impressive in that one. Ramos put up a good fight as well, but nonetheless, and I think it's good. It's good prep. Not maybe the entry turnout that maybe Rock would have wanted for the race compared to what we saw last year, but nonetheless, the drivers that do go there, a lot of them tend to run both Rock the Rio and Supernats, and I think at this point, most drivers have done the Supernats that are competing at the higher categories like X30, like KZ. But it's still always good prep, right? It's one of the only temporary circuits you get to go on every single year, and it's in Vegas, so it's always good to go out there twice, I guess, for some people. So, nonetheless, I think really exciting stuff for Rock the Rio in terms of how the event turnout was and the racing that we saw. But yeah, I got to watch the VLR and the Rock Senior one for sure.
Yeah, I got you. And again, the turnout, not quite what I feel like that was last year, only 216 entries. I think Rock GP Senior struggled to get above the 10 mark. I think they ended up at 11. So on that side of things, not quite what you would have expected. But on the flip side, the racing there was solid. It's one of the more marquee events of the year. And Caleb, I mean, for the guys that did well, like a Stephen Miller, kind of stepping back in the 125cc platform, what sort of confidence does it bring heading into Supernats, knowing now that you won on temporary circuit in relatively similar weather in the same city that you're going to be in a couple weeks' time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of confidence there for Steven, but I think even more so for his teammate in Blake Nash, who made his return to stateside racing, and it really starts to kind of get them in the groove of what it's like to drive in really low grip situations, like what we saw there at Rock Vegas, that continually change as the weekend went on. But we'll see how it all turns out when we get to Supernats. A lot of guys were impressive, kind of giving us a little preview of what we're expecting to see here next weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, Blake and Steven both going to be racing in X30 heading into Supernats. So that's going to be kind of a challenge on their end, with both of them kind of being more on the KA side or in Blake's case overseas throughout the year. But again, a lot of pace at Rock Vegas and a lot of success from the National Motorsports team. Like we mentioned, we had Seth on a couple weeks ago. He was very confident about how his team was going to do at Rock Vegas, one of their highlight events of the year, and they showed out pretty well. But Supernats on the docket. We've got less than 2 weeks, only a few days remain until everyone starts to move into the paddock and get set to go at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And as we headed into the prep for Supernats into the week, we figured what better people to talk about Supernats with than the people that have had a lot of success at this event. There's only been 4 drivers ever to win four main events at the SCUSA Supernationals, and 2 of them are joining us tonight. First off, we've got Connor DePhilipi on the show. Connor, it's been a while since you've been in a go-kart, been a while since you've been ripping around the streets of Vegas, but there's little doubt that you're one of the greatest to ever do it on that sort of term. So, Connor, I mean, how are we doing tonight?
Everything is great. Yeah. Thank you all for having me. I think it's a very fitting episode after hearing, sounds like there's some A&M fans here, and I'm marrying into a Gamecocks family. And we got Adam Levy. He's a Gamecock down there. So, I'm happy. It sounds like
I don't want to hear it.
but I will smile. But yeah, no, it's always an exciting week. Supernats has been a phenomenal event for many years, and obviously I haven't competitively raced karts in quite a long time, which starts to age myself, but it doesn't seem like it's been long ago. But it's great to see that event continues to grow every year. The competition level is incredibly high. We still have that kind of that influx of Europeans coming over. And that was always one of the highlights for me as an American. I never got to go over and race in Europe in the karting kind of side of things. So that was always my shot to try to, quote unquote, kind of measure yourself against the others. And a lot of the US kids who don't have that opportunity, it's their one shot in the year to try to see what they have compared to other guys around the world. So it's always a great event. And looking forward to talking some more about it tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, it's awesome to hear about the South Carolina win on your end. I mean, look, I'm not even A&M hater by any means, but anything that knocks Caleb down a couple pegs with his college
Caleb
stuff,
hater.
I'm just a Caleb hater at this point. And UNC struggle. I'm a little bit jealous of Aiden that he gets to celebrate a top 10 win, but it is what it is. But talking about your karting journey, I mean, it's been a while. I think all of us were before the age of getting into karts when you were around kicking some butt in Vegas. So why don't you kind of tell us about what started everything for you and kind of how you developed into being the winner that you were?
Yeah, I mean, so I was actually the first wave of like when 50cc kid karts was starting. So that was like 98, 99. So I was like 4.5, just turning 5 years old. And it kind of started from there. Actually, Jesus Vasquez, who's still very prominent in the karting world, he was my coach out at Adams kart track. And Troy Adams, actually, I saw him at Laguna Seca this year at the Monterey Historics event, which was super small world. Now you see his son truly is crushing it in karting. So it's been an incredible kind of journey for myself to see all these faces still in the paddock that had a huge impact on me are still there crushing it and putting an impact on the next generation of karting. So, I mean, I started very young and I went through all the classes. I mean, I was one of the first kids to do the 60cc shifter kart class. I was banging gears at whatever that was, 9 years old, 10 years old. And that's really what I wanted to get into right away. Like I had my eyes set on shifter karts. And so I started with that pretty young and really just progressed up. And And when Tom Kutcher actually had the Pro Kart Challenge, the first couple of years, they were trying to build the 125 stock moto class up. And he kind of grandfathered me in as the young, I think I was like 14 at the time. And he let me start racing against the adults. And that again was like another level up to really adapt me to what it's going to be like, hopefully to one day drive a car. And yeah, I mean, I think 2007 was my last year in karting, and I ended on a high winning Supernats, and that was my last ever kart race. So actually, that's a lie. I did where was it? Lancaster. They had a Rotax event out there. Streets of Lancaster is called, out in California. I did that event. It was just kind of thrown together a couple years later, but competitively with a proper program was the Supernats. And yeah, it's just an incredible event. And to be where I am now is obviously a huge privilege. And the way we did it back then certainly is not quite the case now. Like, we were just a father-son team who every year went to the Supernats. We were in the furthest parking lot in the pit, in the cheap seats. And our challenge every weekend was to go there and try to make all the factory guys' lives miserable. And we did that 4 times and twice in one weekend. So it was a pretty solid karting career, and certainly gave me the pedestal to put me where I am now.
And so first off, they didn't even have really like a full-blown mini class like when you were coming up, at least like single speed mini, no?
Yeah, I mean, they did eventually. When I started at 5 years old, they did not. But really, they went from Kid Kart, which is like just a 50cc engine, and then you went up to what was called Comer 80, which was like an 80cc engine. And then really the whole 100cc package didn't start until, I mean, we had it was called the Horseman engine, HPV. We had like 2, 3, 4, which you could have the same engine and progress up, which is similar to what KA is now. I would say that was like the original KA. But really, once that stopped and you progressed into the national level, like Stars of Karting, and when all that got really serious and a lot of the European engines started coming over, that's when you had JICA, which was junior ICA, and then ICA, which was like the senior class. So I went through those categories. I went through JICA. That was actually my last year in a 100cc engine that was non-shifter. So that was kind of like my last year in clutch karting. And then I really just focused on purely shifter karts from that moment forward. That's really just what I enjoyed most, and I felt like was most crucial for me to get better at. And there's always been different philosophies. Some guys say, that teaches you bad habits. Others say different things. And we just kind of ran with it. It's what we like to do. It's what I felt like we were able to be most competitive at. It was less of a engine game and more of a setup and gearing and driving game. And that's what I enjoyed. So we stuck to shifter karts my last 2-3 years in karting, and had a lot of success, and eventually moved on to cars from there.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned moving up to JICA, and you were the first driver to win 2 categories in one weekend in 2005. Both of them, I believe you won every single session. You mentioned you were a father-son duo, kind of getting it done from the back row of the pits. Like, how special was it to be able to come in against all these big teams at the point where Supernats was already a huge deal, and kind of walk away with both main event victories in dominant fashion?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I still remember that weekend. Honestly, I can remember. A lot of people, they don't think that I remember the details, or even, in general, my memory is good in terms of certain things like that. But yeah, I mean, we were a father-son team. A couple of the years I had one mechanic, Mike Adkins, actually the Adkins family, they're still very close to us, and they played an instrumental role in some of our success at the Supernats. But I mean, to do that as a father-son team, having one kart being the clutch kart, one being a shifter kart. And at the time, actually, there was 2 different tire compounds. So there was 2 tire compound differences between each one. MG, I think it was MG at the time, was 2 different tires. So the shifter was on more of like a square tire, and JICA was on another one. So even the kind of setup differences were there as well. So it was a challenge, but at the end of the day, that's, I think, what gave us an advantage. Is my dad and I, we had worked so tightly together, and he knew my language, I knew his, in terms of what we needed to go fast. And we kind of were able to decipher it quicker than the others. And as you said, we really did dominate that whole weekend in both classes. And actually, one of the kind of stories that most people don't know is actually in the warm up, we only had one engine. Like, that was all. We didn't have 10 chassis and 17 engines in the truck. And so the 80cc shifter engine, we stuck it in morning warm up, and we didn't have another engine for the final. And so my dad begged one of our competitors who had multiple engines. They gave us whatever their C or D engine, and we ran that for the final. and went out and beat them with their own engine. And it was like one of the most satisfying things ever for my dad and I, because, you know, everyone, whenever you're dominant, everyone's always accusing you of this, that, the other. And so to beat somebody with their own equipment was like the cherry on top that weekend. So that was a special weekend for us, but really all four of them had their own challenges and their own stories. But yeah, to have 2 in 1 weekend was something that's, I think Fletcher's done it. I don't know if somebody else, but I know for sure Fletcher, I think he did it one year. I was actually there that year when he did it, I believe.
Yeah, Fletcher did it in 2021. Chico Brown did it in 2023. So we've had
Yeah.
2, but there are 16 years between them, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I was going to ask, I was actually just about to ask, have you been back to the event since your last race?
I have. So actually the year I was helping coach Keelan Harvick when he won, I'm trying to remember what class it was. I don't think it was mini.
Micro.
Yeah. It was him and Palacio were battling it out all weekend. So actually going back there and helping Aiden and helping Keelan was a really cool moment for me to that was my first chance to really give back and be in karting and try to have some sort of impactful play on a race weekend for a younger kid, and just trying to teach them the little things about street course racing. I mean, it's different. The approach is different. The way the weekend goes is different. How you can't make mistakes. I mean, some tracks you can get away with, you know, having a bad race and you can kind of come through the field. But Supernats, when there's 40, 50 carts and you got A mains and B mains and all this last chance stuff, like it's basically the NASCAR playoffs, but the whole weekend, and one mistake puts you out of it. So, you know, Aiden learned that the first year in Supernats that year when I was helping him, like it was a hard weekend. And if you're not used to street course race, like it's very different for young drivers to come experience that. And I think it's something that every young kid should try to experience as soon as you can. I know it's expensive, but it's a weekend that I think really develops you as a driver in a lot of positive ways.
Yeah. Are there any adversity stories from your time outside the engine, one that you just mentioned that kind of?
I mean, that one, yeah. I mean, our last year, so we were always father-son team, and we were even in the last year. We were running CRG in the ICC category, and so the Neal family had a karting team called PCH Motorsport, and they were like the factory CRG dealer and the team, and a lot of incredible mechanics they had under their tent, and they invited us to be part of it. So we're like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. Like, we're already strong, but now with all these resources, it's going to be, you know, lights out. No one's going to touch us all weekend. And so we started and we rolled our stuff out of our trailer, and they're like, you know, the Italians look at our cart, and it's not the factory wheels, it's Douglas wheels. And we don't have the normal hubs. We have like a different brand hub. And to them, it's like a gypsy cart that's just thrown together with different products. You know, it's like having a Tony cart, not having OTK on it. It was like this big deal. And my dad and I were like, what? This is what we've been running. And Connor likes it and set up how he likes it. And they said, yeah, well, if you're under our tent, like you have to run our stuff. So we said, okay, I understand that. So we bolted on all the factory items and the wheels and the hubs and all that stuff. And we struggled all practice. We were like 7th, 8th, barely top 10. And I remember I just couldn't get the thing to turn. I'm like, Dad, this thing's not turning, man. Like, I can only go so fast if the thing doesn't turn. I don't know what you want me to do. And eventually my dad had to pull one of the guys aside and said, listen, we appreciate you guys helping us and guiding us and trying everything you wanted, but it's not working. Can we please just for this last session throw it on? We had already qualified. It was like the second heat. They finally agreed to basically yard sale the cart. And so we did that, drove from 8th up to the front, won that heat, won the third heat, won the semi, won the final, and that was it. So, but it was, again, one of those things where, you know, it's everyone's different. Like, there's always in karting and even in cars, everyone thinks that there's this one way you got to do it. And every driver, everyone has their own package, and you just have to learn how to extract the most out of that and go give everyone hell.
You mentioned how it's important at a Supernats for especially younger drivers to get involved and compete in that event, especially in a street course style nature. Have you noticed, is there a similarity? Is there a crossover between your approach during Supernats and during like a car weekend, like Long Beach, for example?
Oh, for sure. I freaking love like anything street course racing. I've always excelled at it. And part of it, I think, is honestly the development through doing Supernats and having that experience of learning how to, you know, feel track evolution, know which direction the kart's going to want to go versus how it maybe needs to go in that moment. And all that translates into cars. Like, I've always feel like personally I accelerate and I do a good job at street course races, and I always look forward to street course races. And flirting with the barrier, flirting at the time we used a lot of hay bales, so it was when you touched it, you didn't just glance off it; it sucked you in there, and you were bending spindles and tie rods, and everything was messed up. So, and back then, like if you had a chassis table, you were the business. Like if you bent your stuff normally, you were like kind of measuring it and farmer style, and you just jump on a couple times and hopefully it turns right. And but now it's like everyone. I hear people put their stuff on the chassis table like after every session. It's wild.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
The
Crazy.
detail that karting is now is wild. I mean, everything progresses that way at every level of motorsport, so it's just kind of part of evolution. But certainly, the Wild West days when I was doing it, there was some essence of it that was pretty nice, because you could just, as a driver, you just had to go out there and figure it out. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have experienced it where sometimes you have a perfect kart and you have like a contact and the steering will be totally jacked up. And you're like, whoa, this thing's actually better. This thing should have been broken like 2 sessions ago.
Too many times.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's wild. Sometimes when you stop thinking about the kart and just drive the damn thing, it just goes faster than it is when it's perfect.
So what do you think about how the sport has changed into what it is today? How have you seen it kind of change today?
It's changed in a lot of ways. Some good, some bad. I mean, we can all talk about the financial side of things, but equally that has changed across the board all the way up to cars. So like when I did Skip Barber straight out of karting, I mean, you could do a full season of national championship for like, I think it was $65,000 or $70,000. Now people spend that on local karting at GoPro Motorplex. So it's certainly changed a lot, which certainly helps, or it doesn't help. It hurts, the average person to go and get involved. But I think there's definitely way more manufacturer support in terms of karting chassis, engine suppliers, teams like Trackhouse getting involved with young kids like Zilich and or in the early days. Like there wasn't that when I was around. It was, you were maybe in the Red Bull Junior program, and that was really the only thing around. There wasn't really, they had the Formula BMW Championship at the time and Formula cars, but even then to get involved with that was very, very difficult. And you had to run their, Formula BMW, which was $300,000 for a season. So it wasn't cheap then. It's definitely not cheap now. But I think the way the professionalism of karting teams now is a whole different level. Like, I mean, Seth, he could talk about it. I mean, he was racing when I was growing up and just starting to create his team. Now they're running around with walkie-talkies like James Bond talking to each other. And it's a high level, but at the end of the day, to be great in cars, you have to know how to talk to your team, how to talk to your mechanic, have a process on how to more efficiently make the kart and or car better. All those little differences add up over the course of a weekend. And the earlier you start to learn those things, certainly it's going to help you moving forward, because if you're not doing it, others are, and you might as well start figuring out how to do that as early as you can.
So what do you think, what about karting prepared you the most to I guess now become a professional in the sport of in the sport of sports car racing?
I mean, a lot of it really boils down to a lot of it's racecraft and just feel. Like you either have that seed of feel or you don't. And that's really the difference to guys that do make it and guys that don't. Equally, I have seen guys who are absolutely rapid in a kart and are bang average in a car. So I've always told people, and even dads are like, oh, my son's not a Zilich in karting, or my son's not a Brent Cruz, or, whoever the top, a Fletcher, like all these kids that, I mean, I'm not super in the karting scene, so those are just the ones that pop off the top of my head, just because that's the era I was at the Supernats that year in 21. But, I've also seen it go the other way. Like I've seen guys who are a Zilich or are a Cruz in karting, and they get in a car and they're like, mid-pack. So it's not always the end all be all. It does translate some, but there's certainly a lot of things that don't translate, and you have to learn new. And again, that's where I go back to learning those processes and learning how to do all those things is kind of like the groundwork, and how you're then able to apply those to a car is really how you make it or you don't. It's not really, being really perfect in a kart is not necessarily going to make you the greatest race car driver. But if you're able to develop a kart, or if you're able to, understand technical understanding and setup and all these different things, that makes a bigger difference than, squeezing out that last 10th in qualifying in a go-kart. But it all starts in karting. It does. I've also kind of in the understanding, or not understanding, but like opinion that, in my opinion, although it is nice seeing kids start at 5 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old, it's not totally necessary. I mean, if you have the financial means to do it, great. But I mean, Maxime Martin, one of my teammates, incredibly talented. He didn't start till he was like 15 years old. And I mean, his goal wasn't going to F1. So if you want to go to F1, then yeah, you have to start early. But if you're looking to be a professional racing driver in sports cars or prototype or whatever, I mean, there's more guys than you'd realize that start at 15, do like a year of karting, do some really like low level car stuff, and eventually make their way up. And you know, a lot of these manufacturers have junior programs. And if you're able to get yourself in that position and put your name on the map, and you are just that rawly talented and can pull it off in a car, then there's opportunity there, and you don't have to, you know, spend $700,000 over the course of 10 years karting or whatever it costs now. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but I'm pretty sure that's what some of these people are spending. So, yeah, I mean, it's changed. I don't want to sound too negative, but it's just the reality of karting. And I really do think, you know, there's some aspects that you have to start early, and some, I just hate to see people start early and get, you know, they get to 13, 14 and the parents are like, we're burned out. Like, we can't make the step to cars. And it's like, well, you could have started at 13 and used that money, same money in a different way. And he maybe had a chance to show himself to the world. And I just don't like seeing people kind of risk it all when they're, you know, 10, 11 years old. And, you know, Ferrari F1's not going to come calling your kid. I'm sorry. Like, unless he's racing in Europe, it's not going to happen if you're racing here in the US. And that's just the reality of it.
You talked about the importance of fundamentals and the importance of, you know, learning how to set up a go-kart. Is there an engine package you look back on in your years and say, man, that was the one that really taught me how to wheel a car?
Wouldn't say necessarily exactly one. I mean, I'm still a firm believer in being good in a shifter. I mean, I think Danny Formal can talk on that as well. I mean, if you understand how to be good in a shifter kart, because it's not just driving, right? It's gear package. How can you change gearing to where, like, okay, you can run a taller gear here and I can do one less downshift here. And then you also learn how, you know, braking, out braking guys, how to defend, like all of that translates a lot more in terms of cars than a 100cc, for example. And there's just a lot of things that you have to get right to be competitive in a shifter kart. And a lot of people say like, but you know, it's the driving's not, you know, it's too stop and go and it doesn't teach you bad habits. I mean, I can see some of that, but personally, I feel I learned the most and developed the most when I was in a shifter kart. And I feel like you learn the most setup wise, also in a shifter kart as well. So I would translate, or I would say, as far as my opinion goes, learning how to be quick in that, not only that, but also like physically, when you go from that to a car, I mean, car is way easier than driving a shifter kart any day of the week, at least in the kind of lower level formula cars and sports cars.
Yeah. So should we be trying to bring shifters back towards the cadet levels of karting? Like,
I would love to see that. I think you would see, one, you don't need 17 engines. Two, you can usually run it way longer. Like if you had like we used to have just an 80cc, you know, Honda motocross engine, you could do a full season, maybe change the piston like once throughout the season and run it all year and never have an issue. Or even 125, you know, we had different levels of that, you know, different restrictors and stuff where you can run the same package and just as you go up in class, you run the same engine, just put a different carburetor on it or whatever, and off you go. So I think there are some classes like that. I understand everyone always wants to be in line with the Europeans. So there always is that battle. There always is that, like, we need to have the prestige of being within the FIA and all that, which I totally get. Like, it's an image thing. We want to make American racing that level, and they strive to be that. And I also get that. But equally, I think having opportunity for younger kids to experience shifter kart racing, I think would be a good tool to allow them to develop at a earlier age than just going straight into a, you know, ICC or whatever the top ones, CKZ. There's always these letters, but I think it's KZ is the top one. If it's not, then it's some other letter. But I think having a junior level shifter kart class would make a big difference.
I think you'd really like Billy Musgrave, Connor.
So Billy, he was starting out when I was my last 2 years in karting, when I was doing Pro Kart Challenge in 125 stock moto. Him and his dad were just starting out. And actually my dad liked motocross back then, and they were coming from that background. And so my dad helped them a lot early on with a lot of different things. Like now they run it, you know, has his own chassis, and it's been incredible. I mean, I was never super close to them, but just to see how they've grown over the years and what they've developed, it's amazing to see. But yeah, I can totally see why he would be like that, because he lived it. He lived the same era.
Yeah.
Like when I was getting out, he was getting into it, and he experienced that. And I think he saw that. And I think there is a lot to it. I think, sometimes going back to the basics is not a bad decision.
Billy, I don't know if you know, Billy also actually made a shifter mini for kids, and he's actually sold this to customers of his.
That's
and
great.
I believe there's one in Mexico as well. So he's kind of trying to push that as well, and trying to push his own engine, I think is what he's doing. But that'd be an interesting conversation to hear you two go at it about starting that class. You guys would be a really good spokesperson for having that class for young drivers.
Absolutely. I'm fully on board with that. That would be, it's really, really cool to see somebody's taking initiative and trying to make it happen. I think it brings value and definitely is another tool that people can use.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about a little bit earlier about kind of you feeling like understanding the full picture helped a lot when it comes to transitioning from karts to cars. Do you think that your era of karting, where it was kind of more of you and your dad, there was less factory support in the US, do you feel like that kind of dynamic helped not just you, but kind of other drivers in a similar situation understand what it takes more than kind of simply growing up all the way through the factory ladder?
I think, I definitely drove a lot of go-karts that were not perfect, and you learn how to adapt and be like, okay, this thing is a pile, but I need to figure out how to make it competitive. And I think as a driver, you learn how to adapt. Like if you are always in a perfect factory kart, if the thing's not doing what you want, you don't know the language. You don't know how to tell them, hey, you remember when we were testing at Willow Springs and you did XYZ and it did this to the kart, like that feeling is the same. Can we do that? And developing that toolbox as a driver is super valuable. And although it's not the easy way and the fast track to being competitive, I believe it makes a big impact on you as a driver, and understanding what that feeling is with different things of the chassis, and how to extract the most out of a kart, and also how to learn how to drive a car that's not perfect. Like in car racing up to my level, you're going to have weekends where your car is not fun to drive, and you're going to have to figure out with the tools you have, with driving style, how to make it happen and how to somehow squeeze the most out of it and put yourself in a position to still somehow get a result. Like that's what you're paid to do. You're not paid to only drive perfect cars or perfect go-karts. And I think that era and my kind of path of development helped me be able to adapt in those situations. I think that has also helped me. Like I love the rain. I love racing in the rain. I think that's also helped me in that situation. Like you're always having to try stuff every lap. You're doing something different. That type of mentality is something I think you develop with that type of upbringing. And looking back, I'm super thankful. At the time, I'm sure, it's obviously a lot more frustrating when some kids just drives behind you down the straightaway, or, everyone has more stuff than you or is testing more than you. But at the end of the day, it all worked out in my favor. So I'm super thankful for everything I had growing up.
Absolutely. And one last thing too on my end on this kind of discussion is, you worked with Keelan Harvick back in 2021 and kind of have been around Aiden throughout his karting journey. But if you're looking at someone coming up through the ranks of karting from, say, mini onwards, what is the one skill that you feel like they should be 100% honed in on?
I don't know if there's one, but I mean, you have kids, like I was around people that watched me from a young age, and they're just like, we watched and like we knew you had the talent, and you never really get that. Like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like you don't really understand that as a driver, especially when you're younger. And then when I moved to Charlotte and I got to go up to GoPro and kind of, or I don't keep calling it that. Is it still GoPro? Or is it Trackhouse? I want to
Trackhouse.
That's a whole.
I don't want to make anyone angry. So Trackhouse. I mean, the first couple of times I went there, and you're around these young guys who you hear about, and like the first time I saw, both Brent and Connor Zilich and Palacio, like seeing his racecraft at, tiny age, and it all clicked. I'm like, wow, that's it. That's what people are saying when they're like, you can just tell. And seeing those young kids have that racecraft at that age and knowing, like, it's clear, I've seen races where Lucas didn't really have the best kart, or he doesn't have some like superstar engine. The guy behind him actually has more pace, but he positions his kart perfectly. He does everything right. He times it right. He makes the right pass at the right time so that they all scramble behind him, and he opens up a 3-car length gap and nobody can touch him again. And having that kind of instinct at 8, 9, 10 years old is something that you definitely can't buy. And it's something that you either have or you can start to develop. But if you kind of plateau and you can't figure that out, it's going to be really hard for you to become, I think, a successful and winning driver in really any category, whether it's NASCAR or Formula One or IndyCar or what I do in sports cars. That's something that it's crucial, and you really see it start to separate the ones who make it and the ones who don't. If you kind of put a chart together of what each one of them have, that's something that they will all 100% have.
Slightly related to this topic, you talked about it a little bit ago. It's really interesting to me how some drivers you said are really good in karts didn't transition to cars or vice versa. Why do you think that is?
I wish I knew the answer. I think some of it is mental, if I'm honest. I think it's a confidence thing. Some guys like Gary Carlton, most lights out karter. Like, I looked up to that guy. He was my hero. Watching him race for like Track Magic and the whole story of that. And he was just, the kid with no budget who started getting factory sport and was crushing everybody, and watching him was amazing. He did some car stuff and didn't really kind of get anywhere with it. And I think he also didn't necessarily have opportunity to get like a full season or anything like that. But for me, that was a perfect example of, he didn't go into a car test with, whatever team. And after the test, they're like, whoa, this dude he's ready for F1. Like, sign him up. He's going straight there. And I think you start seeing stories like that where it doesn't always translate. Like, it's not, you don't have to be a lights out karter. And if you are, it doesn't mean you're going to get in a car and it's all going to click. So I think a lot of that, again, is if you go and do your first test and you're not lights out, like, are you able to mentally handle that? Can you build on it? Are you able to understand aerodynamics? Like, when that all starts coming into play, it's all a confidence thing. Like, I remember the first time I experienced that, and they're like, yeah, well, if you just go faster, the car will stick more and you end up making it through the corner. I'm like, I don't know if that's how it works. Like, if I just throw a go-kart through the first corner and I'm sideways and I don't just go faster and it just sticks more and I slide less, that's not how it works. But like, learning how to mentally overcome that as 15, 16, 17-year-old is not easy for everybody. For some, it's easier than others. And I think that's a few of the things that clicks for some and doesn't click for others.
Do you think that's what clicked for you?
I mean, I've always kind of adapted well. Like I said, like, my upbringing allowed me to do that. And I also think one thing that helped me is we didn't try to rush through the categories. One, we couldn't afford it. Two, like, I did Skip Barber, which was a very low level, low downforce, essentially no downforce open wheel car, and did some Legends road course racing. Like, I learned how to, again, develop that feel, right? We're going back to that feel thing that we talked about in a go-kart. And now you're having to develop that feel in a car before you add on the aero side of it. So I had a chance to develop that feel in a car for 2 years, and then slowly worked up to Star Mazda, which is like F3. And then I got to start sampling in what downforce feels like. And I think there's a lot of guys that go from karting and go, boom, straight in F4, like straight into downforce and all these things thrown on top. And they expect this 14-year-old kid to figure it out and be rapid. Some can, but I think a larger majority of them are going to struggle to adapt all those things at once and figure it all out. So I think there is a little bit of kind of concoction to what works and what doesn't. And I think I see too many people trying to rush through the system. And I think if people were to be more patient and let their younger child or female or male driver to develop through that, I think is a key proponent that a lot of people miss. I don't know if that's because they have the wrong person in their ear, or the dad wants their kid to be a professional athlete more than their own self. I don't know what the solution is. I think there still is a lot of that where it's the parent's dream and the kids are just kind of doing it for them, which I'd never like to see. And I always tell parents that, like, people will, we're going to do this and sell this and do this. I'm like, is it your dream, or is it his or her dream? And I never like to see that. So I at least like to be honest and ask that question. And sometimes I think people are not expecting that question because they just expect, you to kind of give them what they want to hear. But I'm always going to be the person that keeps it, straight and real. And I've had that conversation with several people, and I think in the end, is the right discussion to have, because I think it kind of can lead this individual down the wrong path if they're not getting the right development. So I think not going too quick through the system is a crucial point to not mess up at a young age in the development.
So would you agree there's like just no blueprint in terms of, what it takes to kind of make it in the sport?
Oh, no, you can do it so many ways, man. I think it's a myth that people who, how do I say this politely? People who are unwilling to put in the work will say that they can't do that blueprint. So therefore they already talk themselves, like they already convince themselves that it's not going to work out. Like there's a way. It doesn't matter. No budget, little budget, tons of budget. Like obviously it applies more to people who has less resources, but there's always a way to make it happen. I understand the financial side is always hard, but I mean, there's scholarships out there. Networking is for free. Like I used to go to races all the time, introduce myself. Team owners, they have no idea who won the Supernats. What 15-year-old kid won the Supernats? Absolutely not. My dad used to make me print out my resume, and I would go in the Sebring paddock. I was racing Skip Barber at the time. I had to go up to, touring car teams and these teams, and here, here's who I am. But developing that character and going through the process and getting comfortable to speak to those people and have those uncomfortable moments, I think changes you as a person and as a driver, and it makes you want it more. And there's going to be a lot of guys that aren't willing to do that. And if you are willing to do that, that already puts you're already in the top 10%, in my opinion, at that point. Like the drivers who get the opportunity to be in the scholarship programs, they are on that list because they were persistent enough and their name is out there, not by just winning the Supernats. Like they're there because they won the Supernats and they're in all the paddocks and they're trying to talk to people and they're letting people know who they are and what they're all about. And I think that's a super crucial part that a lot of young kids are not willing to do. I mean, I moved to Europe when I was 19, lived in Germany for 5 years, didn't know the language. I was in Porsche's junior program. And what people don't understand is like a lot of these junior programs, at least the one I was in, like you get half the budget, and I still had to find $150,000 to one, pay for racing, two, pay for living costs, travel. Oh, and there's this thing called crash damage. If some guy like plows into you and you're driving a GT3 Cup car and you suddenly chassis it, like you're also on the hook for that. So like as a 19, 20-year-old, that's a lot of stuff to think about. And on top of that, go out and perform because, by the way, you're one of two guys selected in the world to be in this program. So there's kind of a little bit of a pressure, like some pressure to perform. So that's a lot to handle mentally. But again, with the upbringing and the process I went through, like I already had to deal with a lot of that. Like I had to deal with not having the best engine. Like I've dealt with all that. So that to me mentally was fine. And that's what made those situations easier for myself. But again, like you just got to keep going. Like you can't make excuses. Did I have the money? No. Did I go and buy a tent and an air mattress and sleep in a public park in Monaco during the Formula One weekend? Yes, I did that. I did that because I didn't have the money. And it would have been really easy to be like, oh, I can't finish the season. I don't have the money. Like I can't get a hotel here. I can't do this. But that wasn't the mindset. And I think a lot of young kids, they kind of talk themselves out of it. And I think the more drivers who can be involved with these young kids and like make them realize that a lot of that work early on that maybe seems tireless or pointless or is not getting you anywhere. Maybe it's not getting you anywhere in that moment, but it's like character building and teaching you for when that moment does happen, like you're ready for it. And it's like, now suddenly those awkward conversations and talking to those random people in the paddock, those are the awkward moments. Now the awkward moments are, okay, I'm sleeping in a tent in the park. Where am I going to shower? Right? Like that's suddenly a little more difficult than like if you didn't have those previous experiences, you're never going to get to that point. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there and unwilling to grind. And in my opinion, you just got to keep doing it. You either want it or you don't. And if you do want it, then you're already beating 90% of the guys, because in reality, 90% of the guys that say they want it, if you watch their actions, they don't actually want it. So you have to be that 10%. I mean, look at Danny Formal. That guy raced karting, finally got his opportunity. Look, now he's like paid, getting the race, winning races. I mean, that's great. Like, I love that. Like, I respect the hell out of him. I don't really know him that well, but like, we've slowly said hi, like, hey, bro, I know you won the Supernats a lot of times. You're cool. And like, there's that mutual respect. And a guy like that, I respect way more than most of the guys in the paddock, because I've watched it from afar. Like, like I said, I haven't texted him or a ton or whatever, but I've seen what he's gone through. I've seen the grit and the grind and the appreciation for where he's at now and how he keeps excelling. And that's great. Like that's what people need to see. And that's what people need to appreciate. Not the guys who, I mean, it's great to see guys that are, 15 getting the, part of TRD and they just kind of ride the gravy train all the top and, they get paid rides and they succeed, which is great, but that shouldn't be what the young kids are all trying to aim for, because there's only a few of those seats, right? So you can't be like, I've got to go for that. And if I don't get that, then it's over. That's where we fail, because there's too many guys like, if I don't get that, then it's over. That shouldn't be the mindset. Like, you should be sure you can aim for that, but if it's not working out that way, like, you just go path of least resistance. You start going down the path that allows you to keep going. And I think a lot of guys are kind of unwilling to do that. And like I said, if you're willing to do that, then you're already ahead of 90% of the others.
Man, that got me ready to run through a brick wall.
Hell yeah. I was about to say, dude, hell yeah.
No. Oh, man. But no, I mean, absolutely, like, just being able to persevere. And I think, like, the biggest thing that I take away from that discussion as well is also just simply how much of it's in presenting yourself and networking, like the race outside of the track, if that makes sense.
It's so easy now with social media. All that stuff makes it so much easier now than what I feel like what it was for you back in the day, CDP.
Social media is way different now. I mean, man, LinkedIn wasn't even a thing when it was just starting. Like, now you have the access. You can see who the marketing guys is for XYZ and what their email is, and off you're going. Like, that was not, you guys probably don't even know what a Rotary Club is, but that was like, it was a club that would meet either bi-weekly or monthly. And it was just kind of like retired businessmen that would just meet up and shoot the crap. And so someone said, hey, why don't you go and be a guest speaker? Because they need guest speakers. And so there's different Rotary clubs, every county, every city, they have different ones. So I lived in Southern California, thankfully, which usually if you're a retired businessman there, you've probably done reasonably well. And so I would just go and like, hey, everyone, I'm here to give you a motorsport talk. Like, this is how the business of motorsports works. This is how B2B works in motorsport. Like, you see the Target Chip Ganassi cars, see Energizer, like, go through have your like couple spiels that you have down pat on how B2B works. And maybe that guy likes cars, and maybe, you know what, he just sold his company for $200 million and he would like to see Emery go drive F4 for a year. So he's just going to write you a $200,000 check because he likes you. Doesn't even need to have any business plan, but the fact that you were there with intent and, show that you're not just some young kid that's trouble and, you're actually trying to contribute to the world, or you're trying to make something of yourself. Like, that's what people appreciate, especially ones who are willing to make a financial investment and see somebody grow. Like, once people have sold their business, like, moments like that or giving an experience like that to somebody is something that makes them feel alive and feel happy. And again, it's a simple thing that you could go into a room and talk in front of 50 people and maybe it leads to nothing. Or maybe Judy, her friend, knows the guy who also likes cars and he wants to sponsor somebody. It's just perfect example of that. Connor Daly, the grind that guy has, he's a good friend of mine, and his networking ability and his ability to meet one guy and somehow meet 10 other people, and that 10th person somehow wants to sponsor him and support him in IndyCar and believes him and likes racing. That is the epitome of networking. And I raced with them at Indy 8 Hour this year in a BMW. And I told him, like, man, I put in a lot of effort to where I'm at. And if there's one guy that I could say has outworked me, it's him, because he somehow always puts a deal together and is able to raise the money. And he doesn't come for money. I can tell you that. You hear a lot of people say, like, oh, but his stepdad's, the president of the Speedway and he gets all the free stuff. I'm like, dude, that is not the case. Like, Doug Bowles is the hardest working individual and probably the most underpaid individual in motorsport, to be honest. He runs IMS and all the stuff there. And it's just, it's wild to see what that guy achieves with that track. But yeah, it's there's a lot of ways. You just have to network, ask. I mean, I'm an open book. Kids want to come up and ask me. I'm not a scary individual. Like, come up to an IMSA race, chit chat. Like, I'm always around and always happy to help young kids. And it's definitely something that I love to do. And I want to do more of, to be honest. I don't do enough of it as far as making that vocal. But anyone watching this, if you ever have a question, send it to me wherever. Instagram. I try to be good at getting back to people, but yeah, don't be a stranger.
100%. Well, Connor, we've talked a lot about networking. We've talked a lot about kind of putting yourself out there. We always give this segment or the last few minutes of having a guest on to the guests to give the opportunity to tell the people where they can find you, what you're working on, yada, 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 kind of all that stuff. So beyond just all the networking advice that everyone can listen to 10 times over, whether racing driver, in racing, or even outside of racing, where can the people find Connor and what's he up to these days?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at PitFit. See a little banner up there. But no, I mean, next year, trying to put a program together, kind of figuring out where I want to be, likely in IMSA next year full time, potentially doing some SRO stuff. So primarily still in sports cars. Part of the BMW family and kind of continuing down that path, trying to win the endurance races. I've been fortunate to win a few, but that's where I'll be in terms of the paddock. And like I said, if people want to reach out to me, find me on Instagram and send me messages. I'm more than happy to answer questions or give advice. I try my best to be part of the community. So, and like I said, if you're at an IMSA weekend, come hang out. We had our biggest attendances all year. Every event was like a banger and was bigger and bigger attendance, bigger car counts. You have all the car manufacturers getting more and more involved with, from displays to, fan involvement to grid talks and tours and pit stop competitions pre-race. Like it's a fun event. Like I've seen some young karting kids show up and say hello. And, it's been fun to see faces that I know from the kart track showing up at IMSA events and realizing there's a lot of opportunity there. And, the ones I do see there, I'm like, hey, they're already networking and they're not even in cars yet. So it's great to see.
Absolutely. And mention the PitFit shout out. I do have to say, if I get a chance this year at the ski relay, I need you on my team.
Yeah.
We dropped the ball last year.
You did. Well, we smoked you on end back, although you're like superhuman on the end back. I don't know if you guys have done that. I'm sure Emery's told you how phenomenal he is at math, but I'm probably second best to him in terms of end back. So I held my own because I could hang I could hang on the ski erg and I could do the end back. But I know Trey was talking about that today. He's like, I don't know if we, should we do the end back again this year, or was that, a disadvantage to too many? Because some guys are counting on their fingers and some guys can do math really quickly. Maybe that's not quite a fair race, but I'm all for the end back because I know I'm good at it, and I'm sure Emery wants to keep it as well.
Yeah, you just gave me another reason to text Trey. So, but thank you so much for being on the show, Connor.
Of course.
And again, for anyone out there that may be watching this either live or on the replays or whatever, the discussion not only about Supernats, because for one thing, this guy's one of the 4 guys to win Supernats 4 times, but also building himself from the ground up, basically a great success story. And now we've heard a lot, not everything, but a lot that goes into the other side of racing and the business side. So thank you so much for coming on. And again, we will be very much looking forward to getting some clips out on this and continuing this discussion, because it is a really underrated side of racing and about the community in general. So thank you, Connor.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'll be watching. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so now, from one 4-time Supernats winner, we've got the other one coming up next on the other side of this commercial break to talk about everything related to his own racing program, his side of the journey, and much more. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Are you looking to take the next step in your racing journey? Well, look no further than PitFit.
With 2 locations in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Indianapolis, Indiana, PitFit trains drivers all the way from grassroots level karting to IndyCar and NASCAR, with top-of-the-line personalized coaching to improve physical and cognitive fitness.
For more information on programs, check out PitFit on Instagram or Facebook today.
Brandon, why are there all these charges for just over $200?
I'm tired of all this Brandon business, okay? Brandon this, Brandon that. Why are there all these expenses on AKR over $200? We know, okay? Take a walk with me. At Shop AKR, they have everything you need to start racing at a very cheap and affordable price. They have MXC rims, they got chains, electrical stands, tilt seats, they got MXCs. And if you didn't know, on top of that, any purchase in the continental US over $200, that's free shipping.
Hey, aren't you supposed to be in the AKR Anonymous meeting over there?
Dude, I'm doing a commercial.
Dude, we have no time. It's about to start.
Stop. We all love Shop AKR. Me? More than others. What do I get at Shop AKR?
MXC rims.
DPK Americas is bridging the gap between the U.S. and the two-time world champion DPK Alonso Kart factory team in Europe.
In partnership with Team Binnick, they offer drivers a complete career path from the Americas to Europe that allows them to continue their driver development on both sides of the world, all underneath the DPK umbrella.
For more information, contact DPK Americas at max@drivensm.com to take the next step in your driver development journey today.
Welcome back to episode number 34 of KC Grid Talk. Again, covering the preview for the SCUSA Supernationals and everything in between. We just had Connor DePhilipi on, a really good discussion there. Definitely one to talk about. But hey, we had 1/4 of the 4-time club of the Supernationals. We've got another one, the most recent one to join the club, and one that we all saw one of the most exciting finals in recent memory. Danny Formal, welcome on, man. It's been a long night. You just came off of a weekend and back in the cart with Sodi in Vegas. How are we doing tonight, man?
Hey guys, glad to be back. Glad to be back in the cart last week, even though the results definitely not what we wanted, but felt back to have a healthy rib again, and be able to compete against the best in the country. The turnout wasn't what we expected, but obviously we had the best in the country there, and it was a good weekend. But I'm excited to be here and talk with you guys.
Yeah, and so you overcame a DQ in qualifying, still managed to put together some pretty decent results. I mean, for the first full weekend you were able to run with the team, how do you assess the performance?
Oh, obviously, it's hard to say it was amazing, just because obviously we didn't finish in the podium. But like you said, we got almost pole and qualified, missed it by like 0.03, and a new rule that was a new rule for everyone that no one knew about. By the way, the rule was my exhaust silencer was 15 grams too light. I went on a diet, so the exhaust, I guess. That got disqualified. So again, it is what it is. All good. That wouldn't have changed the final result, right? But anyways, I'm so grateful with Superkarts USA, Velocity Racing, the car. I was learning a new go-kart that I've never driven before in 6 practice sessions, and going against GFC, who has one of the best programs in the country, and Italian Motors and GSL, who we know have a program for years and years. So I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of what Greg Bell and I did. I was using Mega Power engines, and we were the only ones using that, except me and Mateos were the only ones not using a SweetTech. So it was a hill to climb, and I think we did okay. Obviously, we wanted better. We always want better when we don't win, but we were happy with it, and now we know what to focus on my next karting race.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been a few months since we've seen you in the kart. Obviously, you had the race in Orlando in March, different teams switching up in July, did not get to run the Summer Nationals. But, aside from the karting side of things, how's this year been for you in your professional development and just in general, basically in the years since you won Supernats for the 4th time, both on the kart side and then also on the car side?
Well, like I said, in the kart side, you hit it on the nail there. I haven't raced since March in Orlando. Obviously, it's been a while since I've actually raced professionally in karting. But the car stuff, it's probably been the best year of my life. being a full professional for the first time in my life. Let's say I've been racing cars now since 2021 full time, but this was my first professional contract. And what I mean by professional, I'm racing against other professionals in the IMSA WeatherTech Championship in the GTD class. So this was my first actual year in IMSA WeatherTech, which is the biggest sports car championship in the world, in my opinion. After, I would say IMSA and WEC are the two biggest sports car championships in the world. So to be part of that is just so amazing, so grateful. And this opportunity, has come with me being part of WTR now for 4 years, and a lot of races together, a lot of wins together, a lot of championships together. And they gave me this amazing opportunity in 2024, and it was incredible. It was a great year. I got my first pole position. The only Lamborghini to get a pole position this whole season in the GTD class. Top 5 at Petit Le Mans was just incredible. Led a bunch of laps this season. Got to race at Long Beach, which was incredible. Just the Supernats on a race car, and had one of my best stints of the year at that track. We went from 7th to 3rd and maintained 3rd for a long time there. Just, scraped a couple walls, and it was just incredible. It just felt like home. So it's been an incredible season. It's not over yet. I'm actually leaving on Saturday. As now you guys know that I'm not racing Supernats for the first time since 2011. So 13 years that I've been racing Supernats, and this will be the first one I haven't raced. To be honest, it brought some emotions. My wife and I were talking, and it's just like, we love going to Vegas, and it's just a race that I look forward to. It's just so incredible. It's for me the best race in the world, and in anything, cars, anything. It's just incredible, and I love it. I'm so sad that I can't be there, especially to retain my title, or at least fight for it. But yeah, super excited. Going to Spain on Saturday for the Lamborghini World Finals. This will be my 3rd one with WTR, and really cool track, a MotoGP track. I watched this earlier this season. Mark Marquez have an amazing fight with the guys leading the championship. I forgot his name. But anyways, it looks like an amazing racetrack. I've never been there. So super excited to get going.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've talked a lot about the current stuff, and one of the greatest years of your career. And even before that last year that's probably, again, putting another exclamation point on an outstanding karting career. But, let's take it all the way back. What got you to this point, starting from all the way back when you started in karting?
No, for sure. I was listening to you guys for the last 10 minutes with Connor. It was the same thing for my dad and I. My dad moved here in 2003 from Costa Rica, and we moved into an apartment, and my dad bought a racing team called Advanced Karting in 2003, and we came here with pretty much nothing, sleeping in the ground. My mom, my sister, my dad and I, because obviously we spent all the money they had saved up to buy the karting team. And started karting in 2003, like an outsider, didn't know any English, came in here and got bullied around for, first 6 months of my karting career, and obviously had the speed, but didn't have the racecraft. And just started molding myself around really, really high level drivers. And the mini classes back then were so different to what we're there now. We were the introduction year of the Mini Max back when I started. It was, a restrictor was 5 millimeters bigger than it is now, and the weight was 650 pounds less with open gear. It was like mini shifters. Those things were insane. We were, qualifying pole in Mini Max would be top 3 in Junior Max, and like top 5 in Senior Max in a small go-kart. It was insane. So like our mini class back then was just so fast, and obviously in the West Coast there was still shifter, the 80 and the 65. I lived in Florida my whole life, so I never really got to race those. But at 10 years old, my mom and my dad bought me an 80cc shifter, no front brakes, and just that's what kind of made me from, Daniel Formal to Danny Formal, I would say. It just changed for us. I got so much better in a go-kart once I started driving that 80cc shifter with no front brakes and racing against all the pro guys at that time in the 125s. And it was incredible. And, it's something that I'll never stop doing, right? Karting is I'm going to continue doing karting, even though I'm getting more beat up than I used to, right? I'm almost 30 years old, which is crazy to say. You know, I could almost race master soon, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to.
not gonna do it.
Not yet, at least. And so yeah, it's just been crazy that the transformation of remembering all these races back in the day and racing against all these guys, and now being a professional and seeing kids, you know, come up to me and ask for autographs and sitting in autograph sessions like when I used to go with Daytona with my dad and watch all the Corvettes and the Porsches and you know, back then the Porsches and the Corvettes used to have some crazy fights, and it's just so crazy to be part of those fights now, right? Fighting the Ferrari guys, fighting the Porsche guys, fighting the Corvette guys. Just it's incredible to be doing what I dreamed of doing. I was always different than everyone. Obviously, I loved F1 from the moment I saw one, but never had that in a dream, right? I never really pushed for that dream since I was a young kid. I was always a chubby kid, and I knew that, you know, car racing was hard for us because we didn't have the funds to do it, and yeah, just to be doing what I'm doing right now, it's just it's incredible. I'm so grateful to do what I do and live a dream life, I would say, and something I've worked for my whole life. You know, moved to the United States. My wife and I live here alone. My whole family lives in Costa Rica, and you know, I have two baby brothers, and I'm not seeing grow up because just this is where I want. This is what I've worked my whole life for, what my parents worked their whole life for, and I'm so grateful and for all these opportunities that are coming up. It's just been nonstop hard work, and the grind never stops, right? We're still finalizing deals for 2025, and nothing's been signed yet, but good things are hopeful to happen, and we're working really hard towards a better 2025 than a better 2024 that we already had.
And your brother just started racing as well, right? So he got his first podium not too long ago.
Yeah, little Enzo's a little maniac. I think he's the next one in line. I'm getting him his passport now, and he just turned 7. Big boy. Oh man, if you guys think I'm big, that's a big boy. It's going to be racing senior when he's 12. I promise you. He's very talented little kid. A little different than I am. In some ways, you know, since I was a little kid, I was always been really hyperactive, and everyone, you know, I was in everyone's tents eating their food, eating their donut, drinks, just messing around. He's completely different. He's a little more shy. He's a little more calm. But when he puts his helmet on, he's quite spectacular to watch. You know, he's racing Costa Rica Micro Rock. You know, racing against kids that are coming here in the States. One of them just finished in the top 10 in Rock the Rio, and you know, he's 3-4 tenths off that guy, and the kid started racing 6 months ago. So I think he has the future, and we just need to start bringing him here and getting some grunts out of him, and getting that mean side that we all need when we put our helmets on.
You've been a spokesperson for Shifter since I've known you. It's fair to say, I think mid to late 2010s, we saw kind of like a downward spiral in Shifter, but it's making a resurgence. Do you think that's good for Shifter? Are you happy to see that?
No, for sure. Okay. Again, no jabs at anyone. The only smaller field that I've seen in the last 5 years was this race last weekend. Apart from that, every field this season's been insane. Stars with their new KZ class, there's 25 to 30. SCUSA Pro Tour, 2 years ago we had 12. Now we have 30, 35. Europeans are coming for our summer rounds, right? Which we haven't seen that in a long time. It's crazy, you know, everyone said, Shifter's expensive. Shifter's this. Now we're racing the most expensive class in karting, and it grew. It's the most expensive by far. People don't care about the cost if the racing is good and if it teaches them the right ways. We saw Connor Sillage jumping in that go-kart at NOLA when I got COVID 2 years ago, maybe, with Greg Bell, and, you know, putting an outside pole, and people kind of like, okay, well, look at this kid, you know, NASCAR Cup driver soon and racing Xfinity next season. And, you know, Shifter. Brent Cruz, the same thing, you know, 13-year-old kid racing KZ at Supernats, you know, putting in the top 7 in the finals. Just like, KZ's where it's at. Connor said it, you know, we could drive KA, you could drive X30, you could drive anything. You could be good and it'll help you, but KZ is where you learn how to use front brakes, how to use engine to stop, how to use this, how to do that, how to pass with the brakes and the engine, how to, in the race at Rock, I had metal to metal brakes. I ran out of completely zero. When I say zero brake pads, I had zero brake pads lap 5. I wanted to pull in, but you can't do that when you're a paid driver and you're representing a brand. You can't stop. No excuse. I didn't have enough to win, but I had no brakes, so you have to learn what to do. Brake every lap I was working on the brake bias, doing this on the downshifts. Can't rev 19,000 RPM because I'll break the reeds, I'll break the engine. So you have to kind of get a manage of where you can use the engine more, where you can use the engine less. Same thing with the car. We did a Petit Le Mans in October, and the last stint I did a double to finish the race when we finished P5. The last 15 laps I had zero brakes. When I say, again, it was metal to metal because of all the pickup inside. Our brake ducts got full of rubber, and there was zero cooling whatsoever for the last 30 minutes of the race or so. So the car almost caught on fire because the brakes were so hot. So we had no brakes. So again, that's something you have to adapt. How do you learn how to do that with a KA, right? How do you learn to do that with an X30 when you're barely pressing the brakes? And freaking Mooresville, you press the brake in one corner in those classes. Like, I love it. I loved it, right? I raced it. I enjoyed it. But you brake once. Hard, you brake once. It's the hairpin. And in the KA, not so much. So it's hard, right? That's where you learn all that stuff is KZ. And again, Connor kind of said it. You don't have to be incredible in go-karts and be good in cars, right? But it definitely helps. You see the top drivers in IMSA, the top guys, the top dogs, they're all good in karting. They're all very good in karting.
What do you say to the people that say that shifter drivers, you learn bad habits to get in the cars?
It depends what cars. If you're talking about an F4, probably. But an F4 is a Miata's faster than F4. Like, there's nothing about an F4. It goes 110 miles an hour. Right? Yeah, it's probably going to learn bad habits with a shifter because a shifter's a lot faster. But when you're talking about F3, Indy Lights, IndyCar, Will Power and I have become extremely close in the last year because he calls me and asks about tips about karting. Because this championship push he had was, he told me 90% of it because he bought a KZ. He stopped driving X30, he bought a KZ, and just started driving front brakes with AJ Myers at Morrisville. Just started driving him and Santino Ferrucci, driving every other day at Morrisville. It doesn't teach you bad habits if you're driving the right race cars. In my race cars, you need to point the car, turn the car, accelerate the car. Try to use no traction control whatsoever. Well, a shifter is the same way. You brake, you point, you just get on the gas. You get on the gas too early, you slide, you go slow. It's for me. I'm always gonna fight to the death and tell everyone that you want to go race cars, you should probably do a season in KZ first, in my opinion, or at least half a season, or own that go-kart and still go race cars. Just teaches you so many good habits and it's so physical. It kicks your butt so hard. Seriously, my ribs are still messed up. Like, I'm not hurting like pain wise, but like I look like I got beat up by John Jones. Like I'm and it's karting. And again, I'll drive a KA. And again, no disrespect, I love driving KA. I race KA once a month in Costa Rica. I enjoy driving it, but I could drive that, no offense, with one hand and not sweat because it's just not physical like a shifter. A shifter just kicks your butt. I think the final at Rock was 30 laps. Jesus, tired after that race.
Wow.
That was 30 laps. Flat shifting, you flat shift the Rock from 3rd to 6th. You're not lifting to shift. Like, I was dead. Like, I haven't driven since March. I was destroyed. So it's like, that's what I want to feel like when I drive. I want to feel like I'm dying because that's what's going to help me get in the car and do 2.5 hour stint and not break an actual sweat of physical. Right? When a car, I could drive 5 hours without feeling hard burns on my arms, my forearms, my neck. I get just extremely hot because those things are so hot, but you can't teach that in a go-kart. So again, I'll go to the grave and I'll fight anyone that wants to say that, shifter teaches you bad habits and it's bad for you, because it doesn't really teach you bad habits if you're driving something that's fast at a 100 horsepower race car.
So, what got you into a shifter in the first place? Who got you into a shifter in the first place?
That 80. We saw one. Well, we were watching, obviously. We lived in Florida, and that time Stars of Karting was a huge deal. And at that time, 80 shifter and 65 shifter existed. And it was really cool. Karting back then, I don't think any of you guys were in it. Like 2004, 2003, 2005.
That's when I was born, dude.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah,
Exactly. So,
1-year-old.
Karting was really separated in the United States. It was really East and West, like fully, right? We had East and West championships, and then we met somewhere in the country and fought each other. It was that big. And East was Rotax, tag, and then West was really shifter based. You got the Speed brothers, you got Gary Carlson, you got Connor back then, you got a bunch of guys racing shifter. And the East Coast, we had a few guys that were shifter guys, but mostly the West Coast was. And my dad, having the team that he had a shifter customer. It was a 125 ICC back then, Pavesi, I believe. And I was 10 years old, but I was a big 10-year-old. I was probably 5'6", 5'7", 140-pound 10-year-old. That's why I didn't race Minimax till, I started racing junior when I was 10 and senior when I was 13, just because I was such a big kid. And he's like, hey, you mind if my son drives it? And we were at this track in Miami called Opelika, small, sketchy racetrack.
It was sick though. It was a sick track.
One of the best tracks to teach drivers how to drive, because it was extremely bumpy, extremely tight, with a long straight, and tires, no curbs. So you turn in too early, you hit a tire, you flip. All good. Happened to me a couple times. So I'm telling you, it was a sketchy racetrack. And he's like, yeah, no problem. But if he breaks it, you have to pay for the parts. And I went out there, kind of understood you have to lift to shift the brakes. And after 5 laps, I was matching the guy's pace, and I got out of the go-kart and took my helmet off. And I told my dad, I don't want to race anything else ever again. This is so fast. This is so fun. And one of my dad's customers had an 80cc 101 chassis. So they don't really make those much anymore, but like back in the day, WKA and a bunch of other classes, IKIF and stuff like that, had a class called HPV. And they used to run these chassis called 101, which is a little bit bigger than a Mini, but a little smaller than a regular kart. I believe a Mini's 95, and a senior kart's 115, if I'm not correct. I could be mistaken, but it was a 101 chassis with an 80 mod shifter. So it was like a 105 cc, no front brakes. It weighed like 245 pounds with me in it. It was incredibly fast. And I was 9 years old, and I drove it from 9 to 12 years old every single day of my life, because my dad had the track at his shop. Every single day out of school, did about 30 to 40 laps in that shifter. And it wasn't really teaching me bad habits at that time, because, okay, I will give you that. There is sometimes bad habits when you drive a shifter and go to a tag, because obviously you're trying to use the brakes a lot more, trying to point the go-kart, stop the go-kart. When X30 and KA, you have to roll a lot more. So back then, it was a perfect best of both worlds, because I still had to roll because I didn't have front brakes. So if I tried to go in too deep, I would, wouldn't stop. So it was the perfect go-kart. I drove that every single day until the brakes stopped working. And and that's how I kind of got into shifter back then. I think I stopped in, I would say 2012, 2011. No, but before that, no, way before that. Like 2009, I would probably say it stopped. And I was too big for it. I was already racing junior, fully overweight at 2009. So yeah, I stopped them. And then in 2011, I was racing Cosmic. I was sponsored by J3 back then. And back then, the Florida Winter Tour had the Rotax weekend, the tag weekend, and then the Rotax weekend, right? If you guys remember. And this guy had a KZ. And he's like, Danny, do you want to race? I'm like, of course I do. And it was a KZ that they just bought from Supernats in 2010. I got an Artigo kart with a Vortex. And we went to the Florida Winter Tour, and, Barrichello was driving back then. Rubens, good friend of mine, he was driving, and he didn't end up racing. But so I used that go-kart, Rubens' kart. And I raced in 2011. I did the last 4 rounds, and I won 3 out of the 4 rounds against a really fast Canadian driver. Forgot his name, but he was a very good driver. He finished top 5 in Supernats a couple times, and that's when the addiction started. I wanted to just drive KZ, but KZ was not huge at that time. Only Supernats. Across the country was dead, right? There was 5 of us or 6 of us in the winter tour, and it really didn't start for full time in shifter racing until I had signed with Danilo Rossi, with Don Gilbo and DRT. Once I did my 7th month spell with the CRG factory team when I was a factory driver, lived over there in Europe for 7 months doing the Euromax and DD2, and I was supposed to do the full season in the KZ2 and the European KZ2. It just didn't work out. I missed home. I got homesick very, very badly. I was only 16, 17 years old. Wasn't making any money racing at that time. I was just racing for free, so I didn't have any money to afford anything over there. My parents still had to pay for a bunch of stuff. So that's when I decided, guys, I'm not happy here. And I came back home and I contacted Don and I'm like, hey, do you have a spot for Supernats 2014? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll charge you this. I'm like, no, sorry. If you're charging me, I'm not interested. And he's like, well, we'll do this. If you finish in the top 3, you don't have to pay. And if you win, I'll give you this. I'm like, okay, deal. And that's when it started. We finished my first ever actual shifter race at Supernats was 2014 in S1. And I finished 3rd. Against Jordan Lennox won that race, and Davide Fore finished 2nd. Mm-hmm. And we were definitely an underdog. No one really knew me to drive shifter back then. I was racing a lot of tag racing back then, and yeah, 2014 started with DR, and then we went back-to-back winners in S1 in 2015 and 2016. So kind of started, I would say my full first season is 2014, and it was incredible. And I look back at it and I wish I would have started earlier, because it's just been incredible. I love shifter, and I'll never stop. I'll never stop until I can't move anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, going from the tag, going to the shifter, and really kind of the last decade or so, you've been, I don't know if this is too much of an aggressive statement, I'd say you've been the most sort of consistent proponent, the most consistent figurehead of American shifter racing. I mean, how satisfying is it to see now suddenly you've got guys that are coming through the ranks, you've got guys that are coming up and they really are able to run shifter. You've got so many young guys coming in now, whereas it felt like 5, 6, even back to like 3, 4 years ago, it was very rare for someone to come in at like 16 or 17.
No, for sure. I think the perfect example of a guy coming in and showing old guys like me what's up is Mateus, right? It's hard to compare Mateus to anybody like Kyle, Jacob Gulick, Hunter Pickett, all these guys. They're all fantastic drivers. Mateus is obviously, in my opinion, another level. And these guys, a guy that drives every weekend of his life, and he's now doing KZ. I was telling my wife before the race, if I wasn't racing, I'd bet, I'd always bet for him, just because it's actually a pleasure to watch him drive, right? He does things with the go-kart that it's very nice to watch. Obviously, never going to let anyone beat me and try to, I'm not saying that just because I'm saying that is not, I'm going to point you by, but it is truly amazing to watch him. I think AJ Myers and myself have been on top of the shifter program for a long time. I would say I started a little bit before AJ, but me and him, won back to, a lot of championships. I haven't really done like as many championships, full championships as AJ. He's won a lot of Pro Tour championships. I've won a lot of Vegas races. So not gonna lie, I take my Supernats wins over those championships. But again, he's won a lot. I think AJ and myself, back then, Jake French, he kind of took a step back, but we've been the most consistent drivers for a very long time. And to see guys like Kyle Wick, Jacob Gulick, Hunter Pickett, a bunch of these guys that 3 years ago you barely heard of them, and now they're fighting for championships and wins every single weekend. And it proves that the karting is growing in shifter, and obviously GFC has a fantastic program. But not only them, there's other drivers that are always up there nowadays, and like you said, Emory. It's just growing, and you see new kids. Anthony Martella is a perfect example. A kid that straight from junior straight to KZ was fighting top 6 at Orlando this year. It was fantastic to see. I was coaching him. He was doing fantastic, and we not only him. You got a lot of kids. Cooper Beckland's another kid. Senior a couple of years, and then went straight to shifters. It's definitely seeing the movement is so cool. Hopefully I see more, and hopefully, us old guys now get more younger guys to come in and take our spots and learn that shifter racing really helps you. And if you want to continue this as a career, in car racing, really does help. For professional go-kart driver, I would say it's a hard class to be in right now, just because not all championships are worth it for the teams. Like obviously Supernats, huge, worth it. Rock the Rio, it's worth it. Maybe the Florida Winter Tour here and there, and the Pro Tour, right? You got 5-6 races max a year. But when you do X30 or let's say, I don't know many pro guys in KA, let's say people get paid to race in KA, but you got a lot more races. So it is a difficult, if you want to do as a karting driver, as a professional karting driver, I think it is a hard class right now. I think that'll hopefully change at one point when the prize winnings are so big in KZ and so much bigger than the other classes that we could manage to do 5-6 races and make it worth it, right? Like Supernats, right? They have 550 drivers this year. When I saw the prize winning being 10 grand, I was surprised, to be honest with you. I thought it was going to be at least 20. Just because there's so many guys racing this season for Supernats. I know how expensive that race is, and 10 grand is still a heck of a lot better than $1,500. But, it's just something that I think we've talked about it with Sander back when we had these conversations a couple of years ago. I think we just need some crazy prize winnings, even though it's very hard because karting, what you guys are trying to do really has helped karting, but it's still not a known sport across the country, across the world, to have actual big sponsors come in. I think that's what we need to move this to another level. And again, NIMSA is a perfect example. You have a bunch of classes, right? Until you get to WeatherTech, you have a bunch of classes, right? The Super Trofeo class that I do, the MX5, the Pilot Cup, the IMSA GT4 Challenge, the TCR. You have a bunch of championships, but everything is to get to the WeatherTech, and I think it should be everything to get to KZ, and that's the way I see it, and hopefully one day we get there, because I think it's once we've seen the racing in KZ with the top, it's incredible. Apart from what happened between me and Mateus in Orlando, that race was insane to watch, and even the race me and Kyle Wick last year at Rock Rio was insane to watch. It's just the racing is so good at the high level, the top level, that it's just so cool. And I hope it gets to one point that it becomes that pinnacle that it truly deserves.
Yeah, and I know you obviously missed out on the whole championship thing, the Circle of Champions that they had this year with SCUSA. But how much of that do you think was in addition to, like you were saying, elevating the shifter class to kind of what it's started to become and what we want it to become in the future?
100%. You just hit it. It's perfect. It not just only gives the winner something, it gives top 10 something, which is huge. What championship, what other thing has ever done something like that? It's incredible. A lot of people now are going to race a Pro Tour because they can. The top 10 can race a Pro Tour, or at least not all of it, but at least a couple rounds, right? Just saw the schedule come out. Amazing job they did, Rock and SCUSA, to work together. That's fantastic. That's going to make both the last round of Rock and the first round of SCUSA huge. I'm telling you guys right now, that's massive. That's so cool to see two complete different championships work together. That's what karting needs. We need unity. We need everyone to work together to try to make this, small sport of ours. Because at the end of the day, it's a small sport. I would say average 300 drivers per weekend in the big national races across the year grow, and that's what we need. We need everyone working together and then making this better for everyone.
So what do you think we need to do to get more eyes on karting?
It's hard, man. It's just hard. It's still hard to understand what people want. People want drama. People want crashes. But at the end of the day, it's hard to do that with karting because, you know, the top guys don't crash. The top guys don't have crazy drama. Okay, me and AJ sometimes don't like each other, or me and Matthias, they didn't like each other. At the end of the day, helmets come off. I say hello to AJ. I say hello to Matthias. It's there's no real drama. We're not going to go fight each other, punch each other in the nose like NASCAR. That's just not going to happen. I don't think anyone would want to come punch me anyways. So
I wouldn't.
So, you know, stuff like that, I don't think will happen. So that drama, I don't understand if it ever happened in karting. So how do we get people to, just by making the show better and making, I don't know, making it gets more people, getting people to see what we do, see how fast these things are, how good the racing is, how physical it is. Maybe put, I don't know, live heart monitors on or around us, right?
Yeah.
And seeing our heartbeat get to 190 beats per minute while we're driving, you know, an onboard camera like F1, you know, inside the helmet to watch live while we're racing. I don't know. Stuff, it's hard. It's hard. You guys have done fantastic. Like what back 3 years ago to what we have now is incredible. And I'm very grateful for Kart Chaser to be one of the biggest believers in karting, because without you guys, I think we'd still be similar to where we were 3 years ago. But it's still not enough, right? And we all know that. We need more crowds. We know it. We need more views. We need more people watching. We need more people interested in our sport. And I don't know how to get there. I honestly don't know how to do that, how to get more people. I think the Supernats races, the parking lots, the big races definitely are more, in my opinion. Again, just because I'm faster doesn't mean I'm pushing for it. But you get 50 guys at Newcastle and Shifter. You get 50 guys at Supernats and Shifter. There's no comparing it. You can't compare the excitement watching Shifters go 100 miles an hour at Supernats or 100 miles an hour at Newcastle. There's just no comparison. Mm-hmm. Like the excitement of a parking lot race is 10 times more than a normal race. And in F1, it's not like that. Watching Monaco is the most boring thing in the history of the world. I watch it because I like F1, but it is terrible. And then you watch a race in Spain, in Catalunya, and it's incredible because they're passing each other every corner. So it's not the same as F1, right? So it's hard. It's hard. I don't know how to do it. I don't know. I've seen some crazy views for Supernats. I've seen some crazy views at Newcastle, but it's not something that we see consistent. And that's something that I'd love to know how to help and change, because it's such a cool sport. And that would just push the KZ class to the pinnacle where it needs to be.
So what do you think makes Supernats so special?
That race, everything, man. It like Scoos has done a fantastic job, obviously, right, to push it in. And obviously we didn't have it in 2020 because of COVID, but they've pushed since I've been around. 2011 is the first time I did it. Every year they've pushed so hard. 2018 Rock came in and they pushed extremely hard too, right? It's just something about getting to the airport in Vegas, looking down your window, looking at the strip, and being in Vegas, just the atmosphere. Obviously, not gonna lie, I think the atmosphere at the Rio is a lot cooler than Las Vegas Motor Speedway, just because it's like something about like coming in the morning and seeing people here from Spain, Spain, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Costa Rica, Argentina, Brazil, all in the hotel at Starbucks line, and then walking down to the racetrack. Like, that's insane. That's so cool. You don't see that anywhere. Obviously in Las Vegas Motor Speedway, it's a little different, you know, being 30 minutes away from the strip. Obviously the racetracks can be really cool there. I think the best racetracks in the world though were at Westgate by far. Those tracks were insane. Just the best racetracks ever, being so long, so technical, so many corners. I saw the design for this year's Supernats. It looks so cool. I'm so jealous. A lot of corners, a lot different than last year. Hopefully the straight's not, you know,
I was about to ask.
1,700 feet long, which I don't think it will be. But it's just something about it, man. I went there in 2011, and every year it's like November. I want November. And my wife and I, the last couple of years, go like Saturday or Friday of the week before, and just like stay there because it's just Vegas, man. We take a mini vacation, and you know, Vegas hotels like itself are not so expensive. The food's really expensive, but you know, the hotel, it's $120 a night, mostly all hotels. So I don't know, man. It's just so cool. And the biggest thing, and I complained to Robbie this year, Rock, that we never have the same racetrack. And it's freaking 5 sessions for everyone. for mechanics, for engineers, for drivers to learn the gear, learn the tire pressure, learn the setup, learn everything in 5 sessions. Nowhere else you can do that. And that's why I complained to Robbie. I'm like, you just made the same racetrack last year. I already started my first practice. I already knew the gear. I changed the gear one more time after that. Like, I don't like that. I want to go in there, have no clue, like 0 clue. I remember the KAs and the X30 seniors last year hitting ref limiter like a third down the straight. It's like, and the freaking Ks were blowing up at the end of the straight because they were running like 19,000 RPM. That's cool as hell. Okay, obviously, I feel bad for the engine builders and everyone spending that money. but my point being is that's the cool part about Supernats, man. It's a world championship. It is a world championship. Whoever wants to deny that doesn't know about karting. Because a world championship is not going to freaking Lonado and doing 6 months testing before a world championship. That's not real. That's BS. That's whoever has the most time around that racetrack is probably going to win. No. I like going 5 sessions, send it, qualifying. That's the best of the best. And that's why, for me, that is the world championship of world championships. I don't care what everyone says. If people are going to say, oh, you just fastest streak. I don't care. That's what I see it, because it's fair for everyone. No one knows the track. No one knows anything. This year, okay, a little bit different because it's based out of another track. It's not a real racetrack, man. Come on. It's a parking lot. We can't make it. They're not going to make it identical to Montreal. It's going to be similar. It's like when Rock did, I don't know if you guys remember, they did Lonado at Hard Rock. Hell, that was not Lonado. Are you kidding me? I've been to Lonado. It was awesome. They tried, but it's still a street track.
Completely different.
Of course. The danger, the dirt, the track evolution, the mornings, 40 degrees, windy, your brakes are frozen. Like last year, I was talking to Remo Rosidi. He was at Rock. I was telling him every start last year, obviously I had a bad qualifying. I had to do 10 turns of brake bias migration to the rear on the start. Every start.
That's
because
wild.
the Tony kart, it was so cold. It was so windy. You guys remember, it was pretty windy and cold out.
I got sick the first day.
Like the brakes won't get hot enough in the warm-up lap. So if I would stay on, 80-20, what I drove the Tony kart at, I would lock instantly. So every start, I would have to do 10 turns to the back, do the start, and the back straight, thank God it was a mile long. I would go, 10 back to the front. It was crazy. Like, that stuff is so cool. I love that. Like, just such a different vibe, such a different thing. I just love it. I just love it. And my wife loves it. My family goes from Costa Rica. They've gone to every single one that I've done. And my wife is new to karting. We've been together since 2020, end of 2020, and her first Supernats was 21. Was that the Speedway one? 21?
Yeah,
21.
Okay.
Yeah, I got third that year. And she took her whole family, right? So they fell in love. Like, these are people that don't know karting. Like, never been in a go-kart race. They think it's boomers. They think it's, 30 mile an hour, no helmet, seatbelt go-karts, right? And I take them, and they're watching me come down the straight at 85 mile an hour to the left-hander that's flat out back. And that year was flat out to a first gear hairpin. They're like, holy cow, this is insane. They're watching every race, the mini, the micro, the K, everything. They're like, this is insane. And since then, they've come twice. It's like, that's like, people just need to see it. And again, we do a fantastic job. You guys do a fantastic job on the broadcast, but
It's not
you
the
watch
same.
it in person. That Supernats races, the finals,
It's not the
all 10 finals are just, you get the chills. You get the freaking chills.
We need more temporary races.
100%. With big crowds, big money, and hopefully somewhere central so people just go and watch and they're like, holy cow, this is insane.
So
You don't think it'll take away from the prestige of it all?
What procedure?
Prestige.
Like
the
prestige, like the prestige of
Supernats.
Supernats.
Yeah, you're not going to do 10 a year. I wouldn't do 10 a year. I would work something in with like Scusa, Rock, and maybe Stars, and let's say the 3 championships we have right now. Do something together and do 3 races a year in the street. One in the very beginning of the year, one in the middle, one at the end being Supernats. So all 3 championships, Supernats being Supernats, how it is. It always should be one race. But maybe these people that want to race all 3 do like a street race championship, or I don't know what you want to call it, or you don't even put a championship and you call them each differently. It doesn't matter. But I think if we do something like that, that could be the start of something. It doesn't have to be 10 classes either, right? It could just be, I don't know, a couple amateur classes and a couple pro classes. I don't know. I'm just saying, street racing, if people see what we do and how Supernats is organized and how these street races are organized at the end of the year, I think it could really make our sport go boom. Because even though, I don't know if you guys remember the Modesto Grand Prix in 2014, it was a mess.
Yeah.
A lot of people got hurt. A lot of things happened. But man,
It was sick though.
people that were watching those races at 1:30 in the morning was insane.
It's so sick.
It was crazy, dude. We were going 100 miles an hour in a Hondas, making all these noise because these things are so loud. And people are topping roofs in their cars at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was crazy, 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 crazy stuff. So, and that was the middle of the year. Modesto was a summer race. So I think that'd be something cool because these street races are just insane.
Streets
think
of Miami.
that, and then the other one that's out was obviously Rock Island, and I think Quincy is probably. I think Quincy came back this year. I don't think it was as big as it used to be.
The only problem with those are not the kind of races I'm talking about, because those are sick. Don't get me wrong; those are actual street races. But you can't have 500 go-karts there without someone getting really hurt.
Yeah,
You put 80 KZs around Rock Island Grand Prix, someone's gonna die.
It'd be like Isle of Man.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
And no offense to Rock Island GP. It looks like an amazing event. I wish I would really want to do it. It looks something I would really enjoy. But I'm talking about more like somewhere in stadiums. Like the Race of Champions. You guys remember that? The Race of Champions in TV?
Dude.
Like
something
like that. You get the fucking 2 best of the Americas, 2 best of Europe. Dude, imagine doing something like that. People would watch that. I would go watch that even though if I'm not racing.
Yeah.
But I would definitely be racing because I just came up with that idea. So, plus I got 2 countries. I can go Costa Rica or America, okay?
That'd be cool too. That'd be cool.
Something like that. I think something like that would actually be really cool. A Race of Champions karting.
They still do Race of Champions, right?
Yeah. They just announced.
Why don't we add go-karts to it?
It's going to be in Australia this year.
We gotta add go-karts to it.
That would be insane. No, right?
100%.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's something that the only way I could see it growing is doing something crazy like this.
See,
Because
now
was the Stars of Racing the one where what was it, the Senna Prost stuff back in the day where they raced in the
like
stadium?
that. Like Schumacher used to race. Remember, like
Yeah.
small inside stadiums, and they're like full banking, and they're like
Yeah.
full banking. Like stuff like that doesn't really happen anymore,
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool, dude. It's
awesome.
so cool.
If there's somebody
with electric go-karts to get stuck flat out and do donuts by itself.
If there's somebody out there who has a lot of money and has listened to this episode, contact all 3 of us and Danny, please. We have some ideas to throw your way.
If something like, I don't know, 30 grand or 40 grand for the team winner, because you got 2 guys in Race of Champions, right? You got 2 guys, you split that 50-50. Dude, that would be some sick things. That would be incredible.
So now whenever I hear
Hazy class.
Yeah. Whenever I hear Danny say, "Oh, I have no idea how to fix the sport," talk a little longer. These are some A+ ideas.
Not gonna lie, this one that we just came up with, the Race of Champions for karting, would be something I think game changing for it. Not gonna lie to you. You get actual, you get 20 guys. Doesn't have to be that many guys. Let's say 30. And do this would be insane.
Absolutely.
My gears are turning right now. I'm trying to figure out
how to make this happen. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, because if you look at the things that have worked in the sport of karting, like over the years, right? Like it's all building the spectacle. Like it's not to say it's a perfect barometer, but when I look at like a race, like the badass meter of it, right? You look at Supernats, obviously starting back in 1997, like it gives people a place to go to, a track that changes every year, the fastest karts that we're going to race, and it puts on a show. You look in recent years, you see races like Miami Grands. And it's like it takes a normal, like national weekend and flip some like variables into it. You get people racing shootout races with money on the line, with actual incentive, with actual spectacle. So something along those lines that you can present to spectators. You can, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're looking at trying to get money into karting, people have reason to put this here because it's cool. People want to go see it. People want to do that. I think the Race of Champions idea, even as another thing too, is bringing more nationality into it. As much as that sounds like kind of a something that we see all the time in like world finals or whatever, having actual kind of like stake on the line of representing countries, like these are things that give people reason to be passionate, that give people reason to care about the sport.
And moolah.
And money. Hey, money.
You do all three things. You do all three things. You just said: show, money, and like actual like nationalism. Dude, we're talking about an event right now, and I'm getting all fired up.
The World Cup. You could actually do like a real World
legit,
Cup
like,
event.
it's like almost to talk to the organizers of Race of Champions and let them like, hey, can we use your name? And you put Race of Champions karting. You got right there, just the Race of Champions name, you're gonna get something moving just with that name.
Mm-hmm.
And then you to reach out to, like, say if you want to make it in America, you got, you'll get GFC guys. I guarantee you got a couple of GFC guys. You got a couple of Sodi guys. You got a couple of 2 guys from each, let's say, factory team in the United States, PSL, RPG, Sodi Kart, all the bigger teams, all the big teams. We got 10, 15 guys here ready to go, right? And then when we could become this a world thing, and we got a couple of Europeans and a couple here and a couple of Costa Ricans and a couple of Colombians, and we make a fucking, excuse me,
You're okay.
I don't want my
it's not for kids anyway.
I don't want community service, sorry. This could be something huge, and it'd be something really cool, and I think that's something you get karting to grow. You get Supernats, you get Scusa, you got Rocky, you got Stars to all come in and do this together and put in parts of their staff, parts of their programs together, their social networking together, and move this all together and make this, not only Supernats the biggest race of the year, which is, we all know it is, but this race could be something, let's say somewhere in the middle of the year, in July, August, September, which you still have a lot of time till the November races, and make this happen. I think it would be something amazing. Obviously, we have the World Championship in Europe, but you have to get them all together and sit down and see what we can do to make this happen.
You put it in a stadium. I was at the Race of Champions 2017, I think, at the Marlin Stadium.
Yep.
You put it in a stadium. It gets promoted to the people that are, whatever, Marlins fans or wherever you host it. The stadium is easy to get a crowd together. And then, like you said, with the Race of Champions name, there will be a natural draw to it all. I think we're on something here. I'm going to talk to Xander about this. Definitely.
No, it'd be insane. Okay, the Race of Champions. Okay, it's a worldwide thing. It hasn't come to the States in a long time. So, let's say, join them, right? Put karting in the Race of Champions. It's cool, but we're just gonna be an exhibition. I don't want an exhibition. I want us to be the show. The problem is they're not gonna put karting as the main thing, right? Because the Race of Champions, how it works is each driver races against each other in different cars. So you race in an Atom, you race in a KTM, you race in a Porsche, you race in this. So they would have to put karting in the Race of Champions. So you race them in karting too. That would work, but they're not gonna let a bunch of karters go race against Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Even though we could probably smoke these guys, they're not going to let it. Right? So it would have to be our own thing, our own race, and make it a show, like money involved, nationalism involved, and just make this a show, full on TV, interviews, drama. If there want to be fights, this is not organized by, what I mean by fights is if you get into it, the guy for 30 grand and there's going to be a fight, there's a fight. I'm not talking, you're going to get banned for the rest of the year. Okay, you're not going to go put somebody straight into the wall, but you know what I mean. If there's drama, if people want drama, then drama. I think this would be something huge. I love it. I'm down. I'm definitely another meeting, and let's try to move this.
I think I also think Xander has openly said this. I don't know if he's told you, but he said this in a podcast, I think either earlier this year or like last year, of this idea of doing like a traveling. So obviously we end off the year in Las Vegas, right, with the Supernats, and you have to get back to Florida to obviously start the year off again. So I think his idea was, on your way back to Florida, you stop by states, and obviously all the haulers collectively go back to Florida to, or stop by their states. But the same carts that you use at the Supernats, you stop by parking lots on the way there at big cities, whatever, that are close to airports, have a good number of people around there, and then you do a street race at every single track. So it's kind of like a traveling street course race in a preseason
Traveling circus.
Yeah, traveling. That's exactly what I didn't want to say without.
It's all good. It's all good. That's what we all are. That's what racing is, anyways.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. That's what IMSA is. That's what karting is. That we're just circuses going race to race, track to track, which is completely fine. You can't take it as in the wrong way. I think it worked. Again, it's just really expensive, right? A lot of money, a lot of travel, a lot of people have to, organize to do stuff like that, which would be great. But if you again, I think this idea, just get all the organizations in the country working together as a unit, how Rock and SCUSA is right now, which is amazing, and do something together and do, a pro race of champions to get our sport to grow. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's Pro X30 and Pro Shifter. And unfortunately, X30 is a little bit dying, and it's becoming Pro KA and Shifter. So if that has to be the class, fine. KA and Shifter at a stadium, all hard, $100,000 purse, a lot of money involved, a lot of sponsors involved, a lot of TV involved. Try to get, guys like Connor, guys like Jordan Taylor, Ricky Taylor, guys like with names, sports cars guys, Will Power, Santino, Logan Sargent, Kyle Kirkwood, big guys to come promote the race, maybe even race Joseph, try to make it right after the IndyCar season's over. So we're, similar time to the RoboPong was this year. Something like these guys can do it. And then you get Davide Fore, you get Morgado, you get, the guy that won Vasile, you get Pedro Hilbrand, you get Marin Kremers, you get these guys. And you all combine them together for one race, one shootout race, but just one small race, not a Wednesday to Sunday. Talking about, we get there Thursday, practice Friday, race Saturday. That's it. 2-day event, and make it something like a World Cup of the Race of Champions. That's a perfect name for this. And what we can do with SCUSA, Stars, and Rock is they're champions. They're top two. They're first and second place finishers in, let's say, their top two classes, which is VLR and Rock, get an automatic invite to this race. Same thing with Stars. Same thing with the Pro Tour. And boom, couple invites from you guys. You guys do some promo on your page. Mm-hmm. Who do you guys want to go there? You guys, also guys by resume. I'm not going to be racing a lot of go-karts. Maybe Morgado's not going to be racing a lot of go-karts here in the States next year. But let's say by resume, we're invited. If let's say AJ doesn't decide to race next all season, he's invited. A guy like Jake French wants to come out of retirement for this one. He's invited. We're talking about Gary Carlton wants to come out. Let's go, Gary. Stuff like big guys, big names, big guys, big money, show. That is, I think, the way we can grow this.
Make it an invitational.
There you go.
Mm. We're gonna have a conversation again for sure.
This is gonna be cool.
We'll bring in Xander and we'll make something happen.
This will be very cool if it could happen. Something like this, I think, would actually take karting to a unprecedented sponsorship level, because you're doing it so different to what we normally do. This is not. I'm not talking about a full event. I'm talking about a show event, which at the end of the day, you're promoting it to promote the sport for the rest of, let's say, the year, but also you're telling these teams they could actually win some money, like actual money. We're not talking about little money. We're talking about actual money. And how you want to split it doesn't have to go 30 grand to the driver. You want to split it, you get 5 to the team, 10 to the driver. then the teams are going to be like, okay, well, then I can race this pro guy and it doesn't cost me anything, right? If they win. So I think this would be something really cool, man. And I think it'd be expensive, don't get me wrong. But if everyone comes together and works as one, and like, again, the Screws that work together, Rock works together, and Stars works together with their champions and promote it together and do this together, I think it could be something really, really cool.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a thing, right, as well. It's the sport as a whole being ready to make that change and to make that leap into what could send us into a way to make this a sport level up there with, you know, with every other sport in the U.S. And I think that's a key thing for us as well as a sport, as a community, to have that open-mindedness of making that change and making that transition of like, all right, how do we start making money off of this, you know?
Yeah, correct. Make it a Las Vegas AMA Supercross final. You know, again, we still have Supernats, and that's because of this race. That's not going to change because you can't just come in here and pay to race this race. Okay, this is a race that, okay, some guys will pay to race for sure, right? But we're talking about the best of the best. Okay, Supernats has the best of the best. There's 80 KZs, 15 of them can win.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like I don't want to be mean to anyone, or 15 of you guys can win. Same in KA, same in X30, same in Mini, same in Micro, same in all classes. There's 10 to 15 guys that can win every race right now in the world. And it's like that in any sport. You got 10, 15 guys. In Supermode and Supercross, there's less. In MotoGP, there's even less. In F1, there's even less. The only one that I could say is like 20 guys can win any race is IndyCar. Right? It's pretty crazy. I don't know about NASCAR. I don't watch NASCAR much. But
NASCAR's the same.
Okay, perfect. So we're not getting 90 guys to come race KZ. We're getting 25 of the best in KZ, 25 of the best in KA, and we're going to send it and make a show out of this. You know, that's what I think could really push this. You guys never went because you guys are all too young, but maybe you did, the PRI show race at Orlando. Did you guys ever go to that race?
They had one in Indy last year. I haven't been.
No. No. I'm talking about the one in PRI Orlando. There was 15,000 people watching. 75 lap main. Invitational race. There was 24 of us. Jonathan Thonon, Bass Lammers, myself, Ben Cooper, Nick Neri, Viantonio Luzzi, Jay Howard, Jan Halen. Like, we had superstars of superstars. There's 15,000 people watching that race. It was 14-second racetrack. Racetrack sucked. 14 seconds. And the crowd was, what is going on right now? Like, the PRI show stopped, and everyone went outside and watched the go-karts go around at 14-second racetrack. We were running, we were all running at that year a Rotax Junior engine, so they tried to make it even. So it was a out-of-the-box Rotax Junior engine. 1191 was the gear. It was like the gear was hitting the ground because it was 14 seconds. It was just my neck was like. So they had a karting race and an all-star race. That's where you had Tanner Faust, Travis Pastrana, Jan Halen, Jay Howard, all the Viatone Luzzi, Scott Speed, like all famous guys, sports car guys racing. Danica Patrick, I think, did it. A bunch of famous persons doing the pro race, and only the top 3 of the karting would make it through. And we would have to race the same tires, by the way. That kind of sucked. Yeah. So like the karting race, it was crazy. Like me, Bass Lammer, I won. Jonathan Fanon got second, and Ben Cooper got third. And we all transferred straight to the pro class. We were putting people through the barrier left and right for 75 laps. Ben did a better job than me. He went from second to last to third, and I went from second last to fifth. But it was like the coolest race in the world because there was, like, seriously, when I won the karting race, I got out of the go-kart, like how we celebrated Supernats, but there was 500 people at Supernats in the crowds. No, imagine that times 100. There's 15,000. People were screaming. People had no idea were screaming, throwing the fence, like celebrating. That's what karting needs, like Supercross. Like when someone wins and goes over the double and stops the bike and goes back up and just revs the bike to its to the chip and you hear the crowd just explode. Karting doesn't have that. And we need to find a way to do that. And I think this is the only way. You sell tickets, you promote it, you get an actual promoter like sports events. I know all this costs money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not stupid. This is all hundreds of thousands of dollars. Don't get me wrong. But if we get that with you guys, how you guys promote karting, and then you get an actual promoter that promotes things on like Astro National TV and this and that, and you make karting like people like, hey, dude, are you going to karting race on Saturday? Like stuff like get you excited to do that. Man, that would be life-changing for us. I really believe that would be insane for karting. I don't know how to do that. It was incredible.
Yeah.
But that
There
just
you go.
shows.
He just said about the PRI. He was there. He was the race director. It was amazing. It was insane, dude. It was crazy.
Yeah. That just shows it can be done. You know,
It definitely could be done.
Yeah,
It could
we've
definitely be
seen
done.
we've seen in bits and pieces and examples that the sport can grow like that. We've seen
Yeah.
if the product is built well enough, if the brand is built well enough, that there's a reason for people to come in and tune in, it can happen. It's not like there's some like magic cap on karting where like, oh, we're never gonna get like this kind of viewership or whatever. Like there's the opportunity out there to build these kinds of really cool events. But like you mentioned, the money is definitely some limiting factor. I think that that's one thing. And then obviously the infrastructure and whatever to build this out would take time. But idea wise, definitely really sick. But Danny, I mean, when you look back at kind of your journey through karting, what's inspired you to continue to be this passionate about the sport? Because I know that, you know, there's some guys out there, there's some guys that have kind of built themselves from the ground up that have made their way into a successful career like you have, whether it be in karts, whether it be in sports cars, whether it be in formula cars, and they're not this passionate when it comes to actually growing the sport, to continuing to make it actively a better place. What kind of brings you to care about it to this degree?
The biggest motivation is that it's the thing I like the most. I love driving sports cars and saying that I'm a sports car driver, and you know, the life I have because of it is insane, and I love it, and I will never change that in my life. What I do now, sports car has always been a dream of mine, but karting is amazing, and it's something that I'm so in love with every time. If it's just Vegas or even the winter tour, like just getting ready for a karting race and putting your helmet on and going out there and feeling the kart and feeling the carburation, looking at your EGT coming in and doing a change and going back out and seeing the improvement or seeing it get worse. It's how natural it is, how you're the suspension, how hurt you get, how physical it is, how tired I got after my first practice in Vegas. I was like, wow. I am out of go-karting shape. It's insane to me. And it's something that makes me so motivated to push other people to feel that, to hopefully see my baby brother grow up and be 10 times better than I ever was. That is something that I dream of when I do have a kid with my wife, seeing that kid grow up and hopefully just destroy me. You know, hopefully he's small. He doesn't have to live with all the pains that I had to live in karting and just the future. It really motivates me to see and hopefully, you know, leave a mark once I'm actually done. You know, I always told my dad and my mom and my family that I want to be known as the greatest karter ever come out of Costa Rica and the guy to make the biggest impact in that sport in Costa Rica. You know, we have a lot of good guys in Costa Rica right now. Diego Ardiles is doing a fantastic job. You know, he's from Costa Rica. He's dominated the junior class this season, and it's so cool to watch him, you know, grow up. I'm racing him in senior in Costa Rica, and he's a great little driver. But that is something that motivates me. It motivates me to try to improve karting, to try to show people that shifter is the reason I love this so much. If shifter didn't exist, I don't think I'd be this motivated, because like Miami Grands 2 years ago, whenever I raced, or a year ago, I had a blast. It's so fun. I did the Ryan Norberg Invitational, got P3. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's all money. I want to go win money. It wasn't because, oh my God, I want to go race KA. I'm so excited. No, again, I don't mind driving KAs. I do it every month. I really do. I race VLR once a month in Costa Rica, and I enjoy it, but I wouldn't be doing it every single weekend, right? That's not something that motivates me. Shifter kart motivates me. It's something that I wanted to keep growing, to keep on progressing, and to see all these kids, all these talents that, you know, are going up the ranks right now, do it. And that's why I'm never going to stop it. I'm going to try to stay in karting as long as I can, as long as my team allows me to, right? WTR has been amazing letting me do what I do. What they let me do at Sebring was like, wow, this is amazing. I was so grateful. I was driving every single day. And also Rawls and Performance Group letting me do that. You know, Mike let me miss warm-ups. Mike, you know, he would have the go-kart ready. My mechanic would have the go-kart ready. I would run straight to the go-kart, go back. Wouldn't help the team, you know, take anything down because I have to go run back to Sebring and come back. And both my teams were incredible at the beginning of the season, and I'm so grateful for them. And until they tell me, Danny, you can't do it anymore, or at least during your season, I'm not going to stop because I really enjoy it. And when I have the time, and I will do it. Obviously, I can get hurt, and there has to be some compensation for that. And obviously, right now, I have agreements in place for that because obviously there's something about liking and then go get hurt, like I almost did at Newcastle, right? I would have done one more session. I wouldn't have raced the week after, which was where I make my actual salary to live every single day. I fractured a left rib, and luckily in cars, like I said, we don't race high downforce cars, so it really wasn't bothering me too much when I was driving my race car. But again, it has to have some kind of motive. So again, this is why also for me, it's good when karting becomes more nationalized, that each race you go to, you have a chance to win $5, $10, $15, $20,000 because it gives me some fight to my teams. Like, hey, you know, I get X amount from you guys. This is just so I can, you know, also have a better life for me and my family. Not just, oh, I'm going to go do laps in a go-kart because I want to, right? Because I've done that since I'm 2002 when I started go-karting. There has to be something that I'm like telling them, well, I'm doing this because I'm doing this. I'm making this much money, or it's going to make me this much better than a car. And they're going to be like, well, you could just go to practice. And they're right. If I just want to continue to stay in karting shape, I could just buy a shifter, go drive once a week at Homestead or Palm Beach or Orlando once, twice a week, once, twice a month. I'll still stay in shape, right? But if there's motivation for me to be able to make some money, provide for my family, and race go-karts, that's a win-win-win-win. And luckily, this last couple seasons, it's been like that, and hopefully it continues to be like that. And yeah, we can make this race of champions, and hopefully I could be back next year at Supernats and rock the Rio and do all the Vegas races. And and I wish everyone that's going to Supernats a heap of luck. Everyone at Soda USA and Velocity Racing, my new team. And yeah, I'm gonna throw some shade at my boy Marion. Hopefully he can win this time. Your guy's not there, so I always mess with him. I love that kid, and I wish him nothing but luck. And yeah, I'm super excited to see what happens in 2025.
I've always meant to ask you this because I've heard stories from people who have worked with you that your upper body strength is so strong that you like bend steering shafts sometimes. Is that true? Have you bent anything just because of your sheer strength?
I don't know. Maybe, probably. Just to be honest, I actually had 14 pounds of lead at Rock the Rio. That is a new record for me. I was 169 pounds at Rock Vegas, and that's the lightest I've ever been. I haven't lifted a weight in 6 months, so maybe not anymore. But yeah, I am quite, let's say, your stronger go-kart driver. So I have bent stuff, and when I get mad, I bend more stuff. But it's definitely been a while since that's happened. So yeah. We'll see what happens in 2025. Hopefully there's a lot of go-karting races. I really love the new Winter Tour schedule, Winter Series. Talk with my team about it. I think, I could do it. It's 2 weeks before the Roar. So it's actually a great race for me to go get, some rust off. Maybe I could bring Ricky and Jordan Taylor to Orlando because they live there. and on my other teammate Graham Doyle, and we could go do some karting before the Daytona races start.
That'd be
Do you
sick.
think do you think your driving style, like just you being so aggressive, has helped you throughout, your street course days like Supernats?
For sure. I think not so, like, I'm quite smooth with the steering wheel itself. I don't make a lot of movements, but my movement of my body and the way I press the steering wheel through the corner, I think it definitely does help a lot in street races, especially any low grip conditions. But it's something that's had to change and adapt in race cars because I can't move. It's very frustrating sometimes, but I'm tied down pretty tight. So it's something that I've actually changed, in karting a bit too in the last couple of years. I'm not as aggressive and as hard anymore on the go-kart itself because, my transition to cars, it's, I don't practice go-karts much. So I kind of jump in. It's similar to what I feel in a car. So I think my driving style has changed drastically in the last couple of years.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Yeah. No, that's definitely. It's interesting to hear because, like, I guess as I was growing up through the days and kind of watching you race and shifter, it was always, if there's a curb track, or a curb heavy track, if there's a street course, Danny's always gonna be good no matter where he goes. But those are like your place, your places to win, so to speak. And before we got into the whole kind of race to champions discussion, I had a question in mind on kind of racing at Supernats, racing these street courses. You listed off a lot of great drivers. We talked about Marian, talked about Kyle, you talked about Jacob, you talked about AJ, but none of them have 4 Supernats wins. None of them have 1 Supernats wins or 1 Supernat win. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, and it might come off a little bit braggy, but what makes Danny Formal different? What's been the difference between you closing out all those Supernat wins versus coming up short?
To be honest, AJ's been really close. I think he must be mad at me too because a lot of the times he's finished second, I've won. And I don't know, man. These are all amazing drivers. These are all really good drivers. Mateus, AJ, Marian's won once, right? In 2019, I believe. No, that's the year.
No.
Second year.
No.
He's finished second 5 times.
What year? He won 1 year.
Marin's never won.
No,
He's
so
never
he was
won
he
one.
was leading before the red flag, and then he got passed
In
after the red flag. In
2021.
Sure, he's never
21.
won.
I
He's
promise.
never won a Supernats.
Oh,
I give him crap for it every year.
Okay, sorry, bro. Sorry, Marian, if you're listening. Yeah, I don't know. He's had really bad luck.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mateus has never done it in shifter. I think he has a great shot this season. I think the PSL card and the Burrell has been really strong this season in KZ. But I don't know, man. It just Supernats has always been something that fits my style, fits my driving style. 2015 was probably my favorite win. We won, every single practice session, every single heat race, qualifying, pre-final, and won the final by 5 seconds. And to Gary Carlson, to Jordan Lennox, to David Foray, that was my best. To Rick Driesen, that was my favorite win. And it just since that year, 2015, it kind of just figured out what the track likes, what those tracks likes, what the driving style it requires, the setup it requires, and it's just been something that's molded me for the last 10 years, last decade, because like you guys said, any street race we're always there fighting. Like I said, that's why I was so upset this last weekend, having that brake issue. But again, we didn't have the crazy pace that I normally have in street races, and it was very frustrating for me because the go-kart was great and the engine, we worked so hard on the engine, and it fits my driving style. I believe that's the biggest thing I could say because all these guys are fantastic drivers. I think that the two most deserving are AJ and Marian. AJ had a lot of pace last season in Vegas race. Obviously, we fought quite hard in that final. He made that small mistake, and I was able to go through. But he was quite fast, right? He was one of the quickest all weekend. So, he's a great driver. He could probably, be fighting for the win this year. Mateus, Marian, he got a lot of European hard hitters coming. So I don't know, man. It's harder to say because I believe Billy Musgrave is a fantastic driver too, and he hasn't won a lot of championships either, but he's won a lot of Supernats. So I don't know. I really don't understand why Supernats fits us so well, but it does, and we're always there, and we're always fighting, and yeah, it's a hard question just because I don't know what actually makes these races so hard to win, and to get 4 of them, 2 back, 2 back to back, and been fighting for a win the last couple seasons. It's really an honor to be in that list and be part of those smaller drivers that could give my helmet to Tom Kutcher. It feels so good and feels so amazing to be able to do that.
100%. Well, Danny, as we mentioned at the end of Connor's segment, we always like to give our guests the end of their segment to kind of promote themselves. Where can you find you? Kind of what's going on lately? Obviously, won't get a chance to see you in Vegas, but still a lot to look forward to for Danny Formal going forward.
No, yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for having me. And again, karting is always going to be there, and I'm always going to try to do as many races as I can. This season ends for me next week. We're going to be in Jerez de la Frontera for the Lamborghini World Finals. I leave this Saturday, and practice starts on Monday. So Monday to Monday, pretty much. And that'll be my last race of the season. In the U.S., we have a cool car race. I'm racing with my buddy Nick Persing in his Lamborghini Super Trofeo in Costa Rica. It's a 3-hour endurance race. That'll be the first week of December. So for 2025, as of now, we're staying with Velocity Racing and Superkarts USA. So like I said, I'm going to try to do the Orlando rounds before the Roar and the 24 Hours of Daytona. And like I said, I hope to be part of the 24 Hours of Daytona and the whole IMSA Championship next year. Nothing's been signed yet, but conversations are good, and hopefully we can be back in full season in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo and IMSA WeatherTech in the GTD class.
Awesome, man. Well, Danny, it's been a pleasure talking about everything from Vegas to the future of karting to the future of KZ, everything in between. So we really appreciate having you on. This was an awesome discussion, man.
Thanks, guys, and have a great night, and good luck in Vegas. I'll be watching from Spain, and if you guys want to have another conversation, I'll give you my picks.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
We'll probably
Okay,
need
guys.
to have you call in next week.
Hey,
Let's do it.
EKN doesn't have you on the top 5 this year, so
Yeah, I think this year they're right.
this time they got it right. But
Yeah,
No.
exactly. Okay, guys. Well, have a great night. Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah.
Thank you,
As
bud.
well, Danny.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah. Well,
I
that's
think we tried
Danny
to
Form.
remember at the same time.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. But
Hey,
no, that was Danny
That's my
Formal.
goat. That's my goat.
No Brendan Jarsacrack. It's Danny Formal. It's Danny Formal, man. No, we just had
Two great
Two of-
guests, man.
two of the greatest drivers that you'll see race around the streets of Las Vegas for Supernats. Obviously, both of them won't be back this year. Connor was expected not to be back, obviously. Danny, though, first time since 2011, he's not racing Supernats. But man, I mean, two guys that have an outstanding perspective on the sport, an outstanding perspective on karting, and really, they both bring so much to the table when it comes to experience, building their way up, kind of finding their own path, and really also giving back to the next generation as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, most definitely. I think hearing from the two of them, especially Connor, was one of the things that I think was super special for all of us to hear, because he's really realistic in what he was saying, and I think that's one of the things that we struggle with a lot in today's day and age, right? There's a lot of people that, for the lack of better words, that are delusional in the whole aspect of where we want to go, or where they want to get to. Realistically, Formula One's a hard place to get to, right? And it's a hard place to really make it. At the end of the day, I really think if you want to learn how to get up and move your way up through the rankings, I think listening to the first half of this podcast is going to be the best thing for you, especially because that was a super realistic and a super great way for Connor to put it bluntly.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to learn more about trying to expand the sport of karting, the second half of this podcast, very much in line, right, Alex?
Yeah, well, first of all, like Caleb said, I mean, I learned a lot from what Connor was talking about in the first half of this segment, and then Danny, I think, just gave us a pretty cool idea. I know it's not a new idea for sure, but it's an idea that's out there that now I think we can maybe hopefully get the ball rolling on that. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, I think we saw the excitement in Danny's voice as we were talking about it. He was getting more and more pumped about it. I think we all were as well. So for sure, there's more and more ways that drivers that have been on the show or we talk to in the paddock or just get messaged to, right, to grow the sport. And I know that we all are in agreement that it's heading the right way. And I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but I mean we've it's shows like this that the broadcasts help. And so I mean I know every single year that we go to Supernats and every year that we even go to the Pro Tour Stars, USPKS, it grows and grows, right? And so as long as it keeps growing, keep getting more eyes on the sport, that's what's important.
100%. Second that all the way back. And hey, we've got a big week coming up next week. It's a 550 entry Supernats race, 2 outstanding pro fields, a lot to look forward to. Alex, tonight was bar none, I think, one of the more informative podcasts that we've been able to do. But next week, man, I mean, what are we thinking headed into Vegas?
Excitement, pure excitement. I mean, I'm pumped for one to be in Vegas, and then we're gonna have an amazing Supernats because we always have a great
bad
Supernats.
week. Bad week to be a scorebook. Bad week to be a gambling table next week for these 2 guys that are right on top of me.
No, bro.
Bad week to be sports bets. Bad week to be a microphone. Bad week to be a
bad week to
be a replay.
Bad week to be a replay, man.
We're going backwards, boys.
Oh.
It's an all-time moment.
I'm excited.
Okay, I've got a bet to make on this. If I have a replay go backwards,
of course you do.
At any point, it's gonna happen this week. Now that I say that, it's 100% gonna happen. If I have a replay that goes backwards, anyone that's on KC Crew that is watching this, that has stayed up to watch this much talking about the sporting of karting, if I make that mistake, I'll buy every single person that does this a drink of their choice. So
I'll be having a water.
Yes. Man, I thought you were going for the lemonade, man.
I'll be having a water. Good time.
Water. Hey.
Me too.
I'm underage. Only 20. Have a good time. Water.
KC Crew only has water.
I'm boss man Trevor Blue. Shout out Trevor Blue.
I hope it doesn't happen. It won't. It will not happen.
Trevor needs to sabotage Emery and just have it sink backwards.
Now, if that happens, I'm gonna crash out live on air. No, but anyways, though, a lot to look forward to next weekend. Both on air when it comes to the broadcast stuff, we've got a really cool setup. Some really superstars working for us next weekend. We know Alex, Caleb, you guys will be in the pit lane. I'll be up doing replays. Huge crew for this next weekend. A lot of cool coverage coming, and then off the track as well.
Live show next week.
Live show next week. Not the only thing. Got more things coming on our end. A lot of cool show ideas. You'll have to stay tuned to hear all of them coming up in the next week.
Our picks are next week too.
We got picks coming. Hey, I was right.
Man.
I was right about the X30 pick last year. No one got to hear it. This year they'll get to hear it. So that'll be coming up. We'll have more stuff with our other on-air talent. David Land will be with us. Henry Bodette. We'll see Mike Smith back in action. Just had him on the podcast last week. And of course, Big Red himself, Sander Clements. It's going to be a great week in Vegas, guys. It was a great week to be on KC Grid Talk. It was another great episode. Next week, we're looking to continue it. Let's have a good week. But for now, for myself, for Alexander Stroll, Caleb Bieska, our great guest, Danny Formal, and Connor DePhilipi as well. This has been episode number 34 of KC Grid Talk, and it was a good one. And we'll be back next week live to continue the actions. Thank you guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.